Chapter 787. Sister Shengyi, your injuries. Looking at Jiang Shengyi's injuries, Zhun Xiaoyao frowned. Even with the help of the sacred Physique's blood essence, Jiang Shengyi still couldn't recover in a short time. At this moment, Yu Qingning said, "Don't worry. As long as Shengyi fully receives the Jade Pool's baptism and refines the Tribulation Transcendence Lotus, not only will her injuries be healed, but her talent and cultivation level will also transform again." "That's good. Sister Shengyi, hurry up and refine the fortuitous opportunity here. I want to see who dares to snatch it from you." Zhun Xiaoyao looked around. The surrounding prodigies, who were originally waiting to scavenge for scraps, all took a step back subconsciously. Although the Jade Pool's baptism and the Tribulation Transcendence Lotus were tempting, it depended on whether one was alive to take them. After seeing how Zhun Xiaoyao dealt with Princess Divine Silkworm and the others, only a fool would covet the Queen Mother's fortuitous opportunity. "Those who have nothing to do, scram." Zhun Xiaoyao flung his sleeves, and the surrounding thousands of prodigies hurriedly retreated. They didn't dare to stay any longer. Only the Ascendant King, Yu Yunchang, and the others remained where they were. "Sister Shengyi, go ahead," Zhun Xiaoyao said. Jiang Shengyi nodded slightly. She had seen everything that Zhun Xiaoyao had done for her. Although in the eyes of outsiders, she had done a lot for Zhun Xiaoyao. When had Zhun Xiaoyao ever let her down? It was just that Zhun Xiaoyao had his own path to walk and didn't have the time to be in love for the time being. "Xiaoyao, don't forget about Luo Li," Jiang Shengyi reminded him again. "I understand." Zhun Xiaoyao smiled. Jiang Shengyi glanced at Zhun Xiaoyao, then suddenly went forward and threw herself into Zhun Xiaoyao's arms. She hugged Zhun Xiaoyao's body tightly with her jade-like arms. Her forceful posture made it seem as if she was trying to merge Zhun Xiaoyao and her together. "Sister Shengyi? Xiaoyao, next time, don't leave without saying goodbye. I'm scared." Jiang Shengyi's voice sounded like she was about to cry. Only she knew that when she woke up in the morning and discovered that Zhun Xiaoyao had already stepped onto the ancient ultimate road by himself, she was shocked. That deep sense of loss and sorrow almost hollowed out her heart. "I'm sorry, Sister Shengyi. It won't happen again." Zhun Xiaoyao also put his arm around Jiang Shengyi's shoulder. She was a mature and intelligent woman who could face everything with tenacity no matter what kind of desperate situation she was in. But because he left without saying goodbye, she was heartbroken and shed tears. This was enough to prove that Zhun Xiaoyao had an absolutely central position in Jiang Shengyi's heart. No one could compare to him. Yu Yunchang didn't know why, but she suddenly felt that her love at first sight had been so superficial as she watched the couple embrace each other. Her eyes also turned red. "All right, Xiaoyao, go and find Luo Li." Jiang Shengyi reluctantly let go of his arm. A drop of crystal tear hung on her long, curled eyelashes that were like butterfly wings. She stared at Zhun Xiaoyao with her beautiful eyes. She seemed to have something to say, but stopped on second thought. "Forget it. I'd better not tell Xiaoyao. I don't want him to worry." Jiang Shengyi sighed inwardly. She originally wanted to tell Zhun Xiaoyao about the Queen Mother of the West and Emperor Wu Yang in the illusion, because it might be a way to cultivate the innate sacred body of Tao. Zhun Xiaoyao's complete version of the sacred body of the ancients was already monstrous enough. If he cultivated the innate sacred body of Tao, it would be absolutely unprecedented and unparalleled. Even Emperor Wu Yang couldn't compare to him. But when she thought that this might make Zhun Xiaoyao worry about her, Jiang Shengyi didn't say much. This was a secret that she kept in the bottom of her heart. If there really was such a day, Jiang Shengyi gave Zhun Xiaoyao a pale smile. Without saying anything, she turned around and entered the fairy pool. They had not seen each other for a long time. Just a hug was enough to contain everything. "Brother Zhun, don't worry. I don't mind staying here for a while." The Feather King smiled. "Thank you." Zhun Xiaoyao nodded. He understood that the Feather King wanted to protect the severely injured Jiang Shengyi. With the Feather King, a supreme outlawed Skypride around, there wouldn't be any Skyprides who would be foolish enough to disturb Jiang Shengyi's cultivation. "Don't worry. With us around, no one will disturb her," Yu Yunchang shouted. Thank you." Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly and nodded at Yu Yunchang. Yu Yunchang felt a sweetness in her heart and blushed. As expected, she still wanted to be Jun Xiaoyao's concubine. Jun Xiaoyaro left and headed to the Gate of Life and Death to check on Jiang Luoli's situation. Meanwhile, the Feather King and Yu Yunchang stayed behind to protect Jiang Shengyi. Princess Divine Silkworm, who had transformed into her true form, became obedient. Her life and death were in Jiang Shengyi's hands. However, compared to the others, Princess Divine Silkworm was extremely lucky to be alive. I didn't expect the immortal slaying bandit to be able to escape. However, with her strength, she won't be able to defeat Jun Xiaoyaro. Princess Divine Silkworm sighed in her heart. After being beaten up by Jun Xiaoyaro, she was now completely submissive to him. On the other side, in a hidden ancient cave, a slender figure stumbled into the cave. It was the immortal slaying bandit, Xian Yu. She held onto the cave wall with one hand and took off the grimace mask on her face with the other. The moment she took off the mask, blood dripped down. A blood-stained face was revealed. Her facial features were exquisite and her brows were picturesque. It was a pretty face that could make any man's heart flutter. Perhaps no one would have thought that the cruel and merciless immortal slaying bandit, whose hands were stained with the blood of countless sky prides, would have such a beautiful face under the grimace mask. Her face was exceptionally beautiful, but her skin was as pale as snow and didn't have the slightest trace of blood. What was more noteworthy was that there was a little blood tear mole at the corner of her eye. It was like a drop of blood tear. This little blood tear mole caused the young lady's already delicate and beautiful face to become even more poignant and moving. At this moment, Xian Yu was coughing up blood. She stumbled into the blood pool in the depths of the cave and fell into it. The pitch-black divine chains of order appeared and absorbed all kinds of precious blood in the blood pool. Xian Yu's injuries finally stabilized. Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro. Xian Yu repeated this name repeatedly as if she was possessed. It was not only because Jun Xiaoyaro was the first person to hurt her like this. It was also because of the familiarity in the corner of his eyes and brows. When she saw Jun Xiaoyaro looking at her with a cold and merciless gaze and attacking her in order to protect the woman in the snow-white dress, Xian Yu felt that she was in a daze. She couldn't tell if it was jealousy or some other emotion, but her heart hurt as if it was being pricked by needles. That feeling was as if the person closest to her had been snatched away by someone else and hurt her in return. No, he's not. It's just an illusion. My brother is dead. I killed him with my own hands. Xian Yu raised her slightly trembling jade-like hands. The memories that had been buried deep in her heart surged out once again like a nightmare. She didn't believe that a second flower would bloom in the world. However, the woman from the Nirvana organization told her that as long as she succeeded, she could go to the reincarnation cave of the Nirvana emperors of the foreign realm. She might be able to make up for the regrets of the past. However, if she wanted to transform herself to the extreme and reach the peak, she had to integrate all kinds of supreme physiques. The innate Taoist embryo and the sacred body of the ancients were undoubtedly the most supreme physiques. In addition, she had integrated the seal of proving Tao and was one of the 7 defiant sovereigns. In other words, she was destined to be Jun Xiaoyao's enemy. Chapter 788. After the incident at the Jade Pool Ancient Land, time passed. News of what Jun Xiaoyaro had done on the buried Emperor Star had spread like wildfire. In the ancient Chaos Tower, he reached the 1000th floor, broke the record, and obtained the inheritance of the ancient Chaos Great Emperor. He defeated the Qin family's son of God, Qin Wudao, in 3 moves. Later, he went to rescue the Jun family's hidden prodigy and fought 3 top outlawed sky prides alone, killing 2 and severely injuring 1. After that, in the Jade Pool Ancient Land, he defeated the immortal bandit, Princess Divine Silkworm, Yarrow Yukong, and other sky prides alone. Some escaped, some died, and even Princess Divine Silkworm was forced to return to her original body and was planted with a slave seal, turning her into a pet-like existence. It could be said that Jun Xiaoyao's deeds had completely shocked the entire buried Emperor Star. After countless sky prides heard the news, they were all dumbfounded and in disbelief. Jun Xiaoyao's opponents were all famous existences on the ancient road. None of them were weak. Even so, those top-notch geniuses, who were feared by many, were like chickens and dogs before Zheng Xiaoyao. Even when they attacked together, they were beaten to a pulp by Zheng Xiaoyao. They either died or fled. It could be said that Zheng Xiaoyao's reputation was unshakable. There were even Zheng Xiaoyao's crazy admirers who thought that Zheng Xiaoyao might win the game between Zheng Xiaoyao and the heavenly axiom. They thought that even if the 7 defiant emperors worked together, they would not be a match for Zheng Xiaoyao. Now, Zheng Xiaoyao was undoubtedly the strongest sky pride on the ancient road of the ultimate path. He was like a big boss of the younger generation, a mountain that no one could climb over. Compared to the clamor of the entire buried emperor star, Zheng Xiaoyao himself was very low-key. After some time, he also arrived at the location of the Gate of Life and Death. It was an ancient archipelago. In the middle of the archipelago, a dark and cold door was suspended in the void. The surrounding sky was dark as if all the light was absorbed by the door. Zheng Xiaoyao looked at the Gate of Life and Death indifferently. For other geniuses, the Gate of Life and Death was a forbidden place. However, it was nothing to Zheng Xiaoyao. This Gate of Life and Death seems to be. Zheng Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a hint of suspicion. His sharp soul perception detected a trace of an unusual aura. It was as if he did not fit in with the rest of the 9 heavens' immortal realm. Interesting. Zheng Xiaoyao's lips curled into a faint smile. Even without Jiang Luoli, Zheng Xiaoyao was also interested in the Gate of Life and Death. Without the slightest hesitation, Zheng Xiaoyao stepped forward and pushed open the door of life and death. That's the son of God of the Zheng family. Around the Gate of Life and Death, there were a few sky prides who had come to pick up scraps. When they saw the white-robed figure entering the Gate of Life and Death, their pupils shrank. The buried Emperor Star was one of the most dangerous places with opportunities and treasures. However, Zheng Xiaoyao was leisurely strolling through it. "Is this the difference between us and the peerless taboo?" the sky prides exclaimed. After hearing so much about Zheng Xiaoyao, they did not think a mere Gate of Life and Death would pose any threat to Zheng Xiaoyao. It felt like a different world was inside the Gate of Life and Death. The place was dark, like an eternal night. Pieces of broken continents floated in the void. It felt like a broken world, as if it had been forgotten by time. "As I thought, the rules of cultivation here are slightly different than the 9 heavens' immortal realm," Zheng Xiaoyao murmured. He had already noticed it when he was outside the Gate of Life and Death. Now that he was inside the Gate of Life and Death, the feeling was even clearer. In a way, the world inside the Gate of Life and Death was similar to Zheng Xiaoyao's inner universe. They both had their own rules and worlds. That piqued Zheng Xiaoyao's interest. It seems like there are other worlds apart from the 9 heavens' immortal realm and the foreign realm. What's on the other side of the realm ocean? There's also the forbidden land of life. Rumor has it that the realm of the returning ruins above the 9 heavens is also a world of its own. It's not bound by the rules of the 9 heavens either. Zheng Xiaoyao had many thoughts in his mind. The world was huge, and it had many secrets. Even though Zheng Xiaoyao was born with a high starting point, it did not necessarily mean he knew the truth about the world. As for the famous martial monarchs, were they dead? Where did they go? Where did the martial monarchs of the Zheng clan, including the heaven-abandoning martial monarch, go? Besides, where was the origin that the mythical monarch Mi Fei mentioned? It was definitely not in the 9 heavens' immortal realm. Zheng Xiaoyao's mind was filled with thoughts. It was true that his strength was unbeatable among the younger generation. He was even stronger than some of the experts from the older generation. However, there were still too many mysteries that he had yet to solve. His father, the white-robed godly Emperor Zheng Wuhui, was still using the 3 pure ones to suppress the 3 realms. Zheng Xiaoyao would have to figure out the answers to these questions in the future. Forget it, I'll find the answers to these questions in the future. I should focus on finding Luo Li first. Zheng Xiaoyao shook his head and withdrew his thoughts. He continued to move forward. Some time later, a river suddenly appeared in front of him. It was a strange river of black and white flowing deep into the door of life and death. What surprised Zheng Xiaoyao was that what flowed in the river of black and white was not river water, but laws of the Great Path. Jun Xiaoyaro wanted to take a closer look. However, he suddenly sensed a terrifying force pulling Jun Xiaoyaro into the river of black and white. As soon as he entered the river of black and white, a terrifying force of the rules of Tao surged at Jun Xiaoyao's body. Jun Xiaoyao's flesh emitted a glow as his blood surged into the sky. He was resisting the force of the rules of Tao with his sacred flesh. Such a terrifying force. Luckily, it's me. Any other genius would have been crushed into pieces by now, Jun Xiaoyaro murmured. Not every genius had a flesh as outstanding as Jun Xiaoyao's. The river of black and white continued to flow. Jun Xiaoyaro even saw many skeletons and incomplete corpses in it. They must have been the geniuses who had entered the door of life and death before falling into the river of black and white. It was enough to prove how dangerous the door of life and death was. Not everyone had a chance to escape from it. Is Luo Li going to be fine? Jun Xiaoyaro frowned. Jiang Luoli possessed the primordial spirit Tao flesh, thus she had an affinity with the rules of Tao. Normally, she would be immune to the force of the rules of Tao, and could even absorb the force of the rules of Tao. Following it, Jun Xiaoyaro began to comprehend the force of the rules of Tao in the river of black and white. These rules of Tao don't belong to the 9 heavens immortal realm. Are they from a foreign realm, a forbidden zone, or some other unknown place? Jun Xiaoyaro wondered. As he was immersed in his thoughts, his sharp divine sense suddenly sensed a great danger. The river of black and white suddenly became restless. One of the beasts went berserk all of a sudden and charged at Jun Xiaoyaro. It was a ferocious beast with 6 limbs that were as sharp as sickles. Its body was covered in a shell, and it had 6 pairs of dark green compound eyes. Humph! Jun Xiaoyaro snorted coldly and pointed with his finger. Boundless lightning flashed, and a giant finger of lightning was shot out right away. It was the finger of the Lightning Emperor. However, when the finger of the Lightning Emperor landed on the strange beast with 6 limbs, it immediately dissipated. Immune to the power of Tao. Jun Xiaoyaro was astounded. Chapter 789. Jun Xiaoyaro was well aware of this situation. It was because he himself had the ability to do so. Magic immunity was an ability that Jun Xiaoyaro obtained from signing in. It had always been a great help to him. However, as Jun Xiaoyao's opponents grew stronger, the magic immunity was gradually unable to keep up. Although the magic immunity could be improved as Jun Xiaoyao's strength increased, the effect was ultimately limited. Jun Xiaoyaro did not expect the 6-armed bladed beast in front of him to have the magic immunity ability. Hiss! The 6-armed bladed beast let out a sharp, ear-piercing hiss as if it was infuriated by Jun Xiaoyao's attack. Its 6 blade-like limbs slashed at Jun Xiaoyaro like 6 heavenly sabers. Jun Xiaoyaro clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. Boom! The entire river of black and white rippled endlessly, and countless Tao laws exploded like water splashes. The 6-armed bladed beast was sent flying by the punch. Jun Xiaoyaro also took a few steps back. Not bad. It's equivalent to a great sage. If it has the magic immunity ability, even a great sage would have a hard time dealing with it, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. He finally understood why only a few of the geniuses who entered the door of life and death had ever come out. Putting aside whether those geniuses could withstand the impact of the black and white river. Even if they could, they would still have to face the attacks of the bladed beast. In the black and white river, they would have to endure the impact of the Tao laws. On top of that, there was a bladed beast that was comparable to a great sage and had the magic immunity ability. Even a supreme outlawed Skypride would have a hard time dealing with it, let alone other geniuses. That was why the door of life and death was known as a place of no return. Jun Xiaoyaro was the only one who was able to deal with the situation at hand. Jun Xiaoyaro was also certain that the 6-armed bladed beast was definitely not a creature from the 9 heavens immortal realm. Could it be that the inheritance in the door of life and death isn't the inheritance of the great emperor of the immortal realm? Jun Xiaoyaro wondered. While he was deep in thought, the 6-armed blade exotic beast charged forward again. Do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Jun Xiaoyaro said coldly. He swung his fist again and unleashed the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. His fist radiance was world-shocking, causing the entire river of black and white to boil. All kinds of Tao patterns were shattered. The 6 reincarnation vortexes were like 6 ancient universes. Together with Zhun Xiaoyao's fist aura, they smashed towards the 6-armed bladed beast. Boom! 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 After a few punches, the magical immunity of the 6-armed blade exotic beast was directly broken. His fist smashed into the exotic beast's body. Even though the exotic beast was covered in carapace, it couldn't withstand Zhun Xiaoyao's ferocious punches. In just 15 minutes, the 6-armed bladed exotic beast was smashed to the ground, covered in blood. All 6 of its joints were broken. Just as Zhun Xiaoyao was about to end the battle with a single punch, he seemed to have thought of something and raised his hand. He unleashed the god-devouring demonic art. The severely wounded 6-armed bladed exotic beast was directly sucked into the devouring vortex and refined. In the next moment, Zhun Xiaoyao felt an inexplicable force fusing into his body. Magical immunity. After refining this 6-armed bladed exotic beast, Zhun Xiaoyao's magical immunity had increased a lot. This was definitely a pleasant surprise. Zhun Xiaoyao didn't expect that he could gain this kind of benefit. If I can kill a few more exotic beasts. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. After that, he continued to set foot in the river of black and white. He wanted to go to the source of the river. During this time, a few more 6-armed bladed exotic beasts appeared. After Zhun Xiaoyao severely wounded them, he refined them all with the god-devouring demonic art. In this way, Zhun Xiaoyao's magical immunity had increased tenfold. With my current magical immunity, it's almost impossible for a great saint of the same level to break it easily. Zhun Xiaoyao was very satisfied with this gain. As time went by, he finally went deep into the source of the river of black and white. Looking around, near the source of the black and white river, there were bubbles one after another. Each bubble seemed to be a miniature world. Is that the power of the world? Zhun Xiaoyao was surprised. Zhun Xiaoyao was no stranger to this kind of power. His inner universe was created by himself step by step. So he couldn't be more familiar with this kind of power of the world. Zhun Xiaoyao even condensed the immortal qi of the world. Right now, each bubble contained the vigorous power of the world. Inside each bubble, mountains, rivers, seas, the sun, the moon, and stars were reflected. Zhun Xiaoyao pondered and said, "These bubbles are more like powers that have been separated from some complete small world." Generally speaking, when one reached the level of supremacy, they would begin to come into contact with the creation of their own world. Those powerhouses mostly used the power of the immortal realm's rules to create their own inner worlds. Only a very small number of monsters could be like Zhun Xiaoyao, carving out their own path and creating their own world. But then again, this is a rare opportunity. Zhun Xiaoyao smiled faintly. Whether it was expanding the inner universe or cultivating the 3,000 Sumeru worlds, the power of the world in the bubbles in front of him was the best energy. Zhun Xiaoyao used the god-devouring demonic art. As he advanced, he began to devour and absorb the power of the world in these bubbles. A part of this power of the world entered the inner universe after being refined. The other part was used to cultivate the 3,000 Sumeru worlds. Zhun Xiaoyao could feel that the cells in his body were beginning to transform into Sumeru worlds. Also, the inner universe was steadily expanding. The effect of this power of the world was better than Zhun Xiaoyao had imagined. This power of the world is indeed very helpful for my cultivation. If I can get the legendary tree of world, then I don't have to worry about cultivation resources at all. Zhun Xiaoyao couldn't help but think. If there was a treasure that had rich power of the world, then it was without a doubt the tree of world. This kind of extraordinary item of heaven and earth would tempt even a great emperor. Its rarity was even rarer than an emperor weapon. The tree of world was the same as an immortal weapon. They were both items that were hard to find in the world. Even with the Zhun family's heritage, it was extremely difficult to find a tree of world. Zhun Xiaoyao was only thinking about it now. In the end, Zhun Xiaoyao finally arrived at the end of the river of black and white. It was an incomparably huge bubble world. Tiny bubbles were constantly splitting out from the center. That's a broken world. Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. The previous bubbles were all split from the giant bubble in front of him. This giant bubble was a broken world. Jun Xiaoyaro could feel that it was filled with rich power of the world and spirit qi. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed, and he directly entered the giant bubble. Within it was a vast world. In the center of this world, endless spirit qi and the power of the world formed a cocoon. In the cocoon, a petite figure of Linglong could be vaguely seen lying in it, sleeping like a fetus. Luo Li, I found you. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled slightly. Chapter 790. Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't actually worried about Jiang Luoli's safety. It wasn't that he didn't care about Jiang Luoli, but he knew that nothing would happen to Jiang Luoli. Jun Xiaoyaro cultivated the primordial spirit of 3 lives, so he couldn't pry into fate right now. But he could still sense some things in the dark. If something really happened to Jiang Luoli, it was impossible for him not to have any signs or senses. Right now, Jiang Luoli was sleeping in the world cocoon, as if the power of the entire broken world was concentrated on her. Her constitution. Jun Xiaoyaro looked surprised. He could feel that Jiang Luoli's constitution seemed to have undergone some subtle changes. Although there were still fluctuations of the primordial spirit daoist body, it felt like it wasn't just the primordial spirit daoist body. Could it be? Jun Xiaoyaro thought of a certain possibility. That was the primordial spirit immortal body, which was even more extreme than the primordial spirit daoist body. It was rumored that when this constitution was cultivated to full completion, it could swallow a huge amount of immortal qi and was extremely powerful. If one really had to compare it, it was probably similar to the mortal immortal body that the successor of the mortal immortal sect had. However, these 2 constitutions, one was to swallow immortal qi, and the other was to use immortal qi to temper the body and create a mortal immortal body. The primordial spirit daoist body that Jiang Luoli's predecessor had was already considered a top constitution. But compared to the sacred body of the ancients and the innate Taoist embryo, there was still a slight gap. But now, if Jiang Luoli really transformed into the primordial spirit immortal body, then it was definitely enough to be in the top 15 of the 3,000 constitutions. As expected, this girl also has her own opportunities, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Jiang Shengyi had received the inheritance of the Queen Mother of the West. Jiang Luoli in front of him seemed to have also received the inheritance, and it didn't seem to be the inheritance of the Emperor of the Immortal Region. But no matter where the inheritance came from, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't care. What was important was the person who used the power, not the source of the power. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped forward and approached the world cocoon. Jiang Luoli's petite Linglong's jade-like body was laid out horizontally. She was slightly curled up, and her jade-like arms were hugging her knees. Like a baby in its mother's womb. She looked so adorable that I couldn't help but feel pity for her. Xiaoyao. Brother, Nizzy murmured. Are you still dreaming? Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. But to be honest, Jun Xiaoyao really didn't expect that with Jiang Luoli's temperament, she would have the courage to enter the life and death door. According to Jiang Luoli's character in the past, she should have been captured by Tarantula and the others, and then waited for him and Jiang Shengyi to rescue her. You've grown up after all, even though your height is still the same as before. Jun Xiaoyaro sighed with a smile, a touch of relief in his eyes. Why did he feel like an old father watching his daughter grow up? Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head, trying to get rid of that strange emotion. It should be because Jiang Luoli's eternal lowly face made Jun Xiaoyaro have the illusion that she was still a child. In fact, her age was about the same as Jun Xiaoyao's. As if sensing the arrival of an outsider, the entire world cocoon began to tremble. And Jiang Luoli, who was wrapped in the world cocoon, her long eyelashes fluttered slightly. Immediately, a pair of clear and beautiful big eyes opened. Her eyes were still blank and hazy, as if she was half asleep and half awake, and her divine sense was blurry. Vaguely, Jiang Luoli saw a slender figure in white standing not far away, watching her. That incomparably handsome face held a gentle smile that was enough to melt the heart of any woman. Brother Xiaoyao? Jiang Luoli's pretty eyes widened slightly, and then a bitter smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. Am I dreaming again? Jiang Luoli didn't know how many times she had dreamed of Jun Xiaoyaro in her dreams. Plus, Now that she was half asleep and half awake, her mind was muddled, and naturally, she subconsciously thought that this was also a dream. After all, how could Jun Xiaoyao suddenly appear in front of her? Jun Xiaoyao's figure slowly approached Jiang Luoli. Looking at the person in front of her who she thought about day and night, Jiang Luoli smiled gently and said, "I am content to be able to see Brother Xiaoyao in my dreams. After all, Brother Xiaoyao has his own path to walk, and Luoli doesn't want to fall behind. Also, Luo Li didn't trouble Brother Xiaoyao this time. I definitely won't be caught by those despicable fellows and put Brother Xiaoyao in a passive position." Hearing Jiang Luoli's words in front of him, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were even more gratified. After all, Jiang Luoli was the pearl in the palm of the Jiang family. It was the kind of girl who was afraid of falling in the hands and melting in the mouth. Girls who grew up in such an environment were more or less spoiled and noble. Jiang Luoli, on the other hand, was working hard to change her personality for Jun Xiaoyao. This attitude was enough to prove that Jiang Luoli was willing to change everything for Jun Xiaoyao. "Good girl, you did well." Jun Xiaoyao smiled. His gentle voice and handsome smile were like the warm sun, melting Jiang Luoli's heart. There's actually interaction. Jiang Luoli didn't expect this. That was because the Jun Xiaoyao she saw in her dreams had always remained silent. This made Jiang Luoli's heart flutter slightly, and then it was like a deer running wild. Her pretty face was slightly red, and her clear and beautiful big eyes became a little watery. Seeing Jiang Luoli's expression, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed slightly. This girl, is she going to do something that is not suitable for children? Sure enough, Jiang Luoli began to undress herself. "Brother Xiaoyao, to be honest, I hate myself. I hate the jealous me. When I saw Brother Xiaoyao hugging Sister Shengyi, I knew I shouldn't have such emotions, but I couldn't help it. Previously, I even thought of the stupid idea of drugging you and having sex with Brother Xiaoyao. Now it seems that it was really ridiculous." Jiang Luoli's big eyes were a little bit sparkling as she spoke. Her clothes gradually became less and less. Her snow-white skin gradually became more and more. Her delicate body was like a tender bamboo shoot, with a faint body fragrance. Jun Xiaoyao couldn't help but think of one of the 4 mythical beasts. It wasn't the azure dragon, the vermilion bird, or the black tortoise. "Brother Xiaoyao, I'm not a child anymore. Even if it's in a dream, can I hug Luoli?" Jiang Luoli's pretty face was snow-white and tender, lovely and moving. The way she asked for a hug in a weak voice was even more like a fragrant and soft snow-white bunny. There were 3 good things about Luoli: her soft voice, soft body, and easy to push down. At this moment, Jiang Luoli was a vivid example of this. Even Buddha would have to renounce asceticism if he saw her like this. Jun Xiaoyao was not a hypocrite or a moralist. He looked at Jiang Luoli generously and said with a smile, "I haven't seen you for a few years. Although your height hasn't changed much, some parts of your body have developed well." Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's slightly teasing tone, Jiang Luoli was confused. Was the dream so real? Jun Xiaoyao stepped forward with a faint smile and reached out to knock Jiang Luoli's little head. "Silly girl, haven't you woken up yet?" Jiang Luoli's watery eyes suddenly widened and her cherry mouth opened slightly, revealing an expression that had shocked her for a whole year. Chapter 791. Jiang Luoli's shocked expression at this moment was extremely cute. The twin ponytails behind her head stood up as if they were about to explode. This isn't a dream. Big Brother Xiaoyao, is it really you?" Jiang Luoli subconsciously reached out her small hand and stroked Jun Xiaoyao's chest. Her heart thumped loudly. A dream couldn't be so realistic. Jiang Luoli was completely dumbfounded. She didn't expect Jun Xiaoyao to come looking for her. Not everyone had the courage to enter the gate of life and death. However, Jun Xiaoyao didn't hesitate to come looking for her. This was enough to prove that she still had a place in Jun Xiaoyao's heart. Could it be that the person in front of you is a fake person? Jun Xiaoyao laughed softly. Boo-hoo, Big Brother Xiaoyao. Jiang Luoli was like a swallow returning to its nest. She threw herself into Jun Xiaoyao's arms and cried. Only the heavens knew how many setbacks and grievances she had experienced alone on the ancient road of life and death. However, in order to become stronger, in order to keep up with Zhang Xiaoyao's footsteps, in order to not cause trouble for him, Jiang Luoli had always gritted her teeth and endured it. She would rather fall into the dangerous gate of life and death than cause any trouble for Zhang Xiaoyao. But now, the grievances in her heart had disappeared with Zhang Xiaoyao's arrival. She knew that Zhang Xiaoyao cared about her. He even came looking for her. "Don't cry. Aren't I here now?" Zhang Xiaoyao patted Jiang Luoli's back. Jiang Luoli's arms were still tightly wrapped around Zhang Xiaoyao's waist. Because of their height, her head could only be buried in Zhang Xiaoyao's chest. It was the most adorable height difference. However, this made Jiang Luoli feel incomparably safe and warm. "All right, Luo Li, are you testing my character?" Zhang Xiaoyao laughed. Only then did Jiang Luoli loosen her arms. Her face instantly became hot, as red as blood. She hastily wrapped her arms around herself. The original airport had turned into a small hill. Although she still couldn't compare with Jiang Shengyi, Yang Rumeng, and Yu Chanhuan. But it was better than nothing. As the saying goes, size and shape vary from person to person. However, there was a qualitative difference between having and not having. If it weren't for the dream, Jiang Luoli would never be so bold. "You've already seen it. Why are you still hiding it?" Zhang Xiaoyao shook his head slightly. When Jiang Luoli heard this, she was so embarrassed that her snow-white skin turned pink. Her twin ponytails drooped down, making people want to reach out and play with them. "Big brother Xiaoyao, turn around," Jiang Luoli said in a voice as soft as a mosquito's. "Why?" Zhang Xiaoyao asked. Change clothes." Jiang Luoli wanted to turn into an ostrich and bury her head in the ground. "Are you saying that my spiritual will is useless?" Zhang Xiaoyao asked with a smile. Even if he closed his eyes, his divine sense could still spy on his surroundings. "Big brother Xiaoyao, lecture." Jiang Luoli blushed and said shyly. Zhang Xiaoyao stopped teasing this girl and turned around. Rustling sounds could be heard behind him. When Zhang Xiaoyao turned around, Jiang Luoli had already changed into her dress. She had changed into a long pink dress with a light blue gauze on the outside. Her snow-white and delicate face was flushed red like an apple, making people want to take a bite out of it. There were also 2 small dimples on her cheeks, making her look even more charming. Even Zhang Xiaoyao was momentarily dazed by what he saw. Jiang Luoli's beauty was different from Jiang Shengyi's. She was like a warm little sun, making people feel comfortable and happy, warm all over. If Jiang Shengyi was the cold and holy white moonlight, Jiang Luoli was the passionate and lively Zhu Shomol. If a man could have either of them in his life, it would be a blessing of 3 lifetimes. Both Bai Yueguang and Zhu Shozhe were deeply in love with Zhang Xiaoyao at the same time. Big sister Shengyi was worried when she found out that you had entered the door of life and death. But now it seems that her worries were unnecessary, Zhang Xiaoyao said. Hearing this, Jiang Luoli was slightly stunned and then said apologetically, "So big sister Shengyi is here too." Luo Li made her worry again. "It's okay. It's good to know that you're fine. You can get together later," Zhang Xiaoyao said. Jiang Luoli's eyes suddenly fixed on Zhang Xiaoyao. After a moment of hesitation, she said, "Did big sister Shengyi ask big brother Xiaoyao to find me?" Zhang Xiaoyao nodded slightly. Jiang Luoli continued, "If big sister Shengyi didn't say, still," Zhang Xiaoyao said. Jiang Luoli smiled sweetly. She then put her hands behind her back and leaned forward all of a sudden. Looking at Zhang Xiaoyao, she smiled and said, "Luo Li has made it this far all by herself. Can I ask for a little reward from brother Xiaoyao?" Zhang Xiaoyao nodded and said, "Well, it's indeed worthy of a reward. So, what do you want?" Jiang Luoli smiled slyly. The next moment, she tiptoed and pressed her soft lips against Zhang Xiaoyao's. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. The girl was greedily immersed in that sweet intoxication. Zhang Xiaoyao was very clear-headed, but he didn't refuse or stop her. After a long time, their lips parted. Jiang Luoli's beautiful eyes were watery, and her pretty face was flushed. I thought Big Brother Xiaoyaro would push me away, Jiang Luoli said. This is your reward, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Jiang Luoli was a little embarrassed. Then, she put her hands on her hips and said proudly, no, Big Brother Xiaoyaro also took advantage of me, right? Okay, stop. Tell me about the situation here. Jun Xiaoyaro pulled the topic back to business. Jiang Luoli was also a little serious and told Jun Xiaoyaro about the situation. After she entered the door of life and death, she also came to the black and white river. However, as Jun Xiaoyaro expected, this black and white river didn't have much effect on Jiang Luoli's elemental spirit Dao physique. Then, she also encountered the six-armed bladed beast. In the end, she used all kinds of methods to escape, hid in the bubble, and finally came to this giant bubble world. Then, she felt that her elemental spirit Dao physique seemed to be resonating with this giant bubble world. Then, she fell into a deep sleep and was wrapped in the world cocoon. I see, Jun Xiaoyaro said. In my dream, I seemed to see some blurry images of heaven and earth shattering and all things falling. And this bubble world, I think it's called the elemental spirit world. It belongs to a forbidden existence, Jiang Luoli said in a daze. Because it was a dream, she wasn't too sure. No matter what, this is an opportunity for you. Your constitution. Jun Xiaoyaro said. That's right. If I can completely absorb the power of this world cocoon, I think my elemental spirit Dao physique should be able to transform into an elemental spirit immortal body, Jiang Luoli said excitedly. Before, she had always been a little inferior to her own strength. Because she didn't want to always rely on Jun Xiaoyaro and Jiang Shengyi's protection. And now, she saw the hope of becoming stronger. That's good. After you transform into an elemental spirit immortal body, you should be able to control this broken elemental spirit world, right? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Absolutely, Jiang Luoli said solemnly. Chapter 792. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded. He understood that having a world that belonged solely to him would be a great help to his cultivation. For example, his inner universe was of great help to Jun Xiaoyaro. It was an irreplaceable existence. As for the elemental spirit world, although it wasn't refined by Jiang Luoli herself, it was compatible with her elemental spirit immortal body. At most, when Jiang Luoli became stronger, he could refine the elemental spirit world and make it his own. Oh right, Big Brother Xiaoyao, if you need the power of the world, I can give you the elemental spirit world, Jiang Luoli said. Although the elemental spirit world was rare and precious, it was also very important to her. But if Jun Xiaoyaro needed it, Jiang Luoli would definitely give it to him without hesitation. No, this is your opportunity. You can refine it in peace. I only need to absorb the separated miniature bubble worlds outside. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled and patted Jiang Luoli's head. If he really wanted to cultivate his inner universe, let alone a broken elemental spirit world, even 10 complete elemental spirit worlds wouldn't be enough. Unless he could find the legendary world tree, Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe could steadily expand and develop. Hurry up and cultivate. After that, we will leave to find Sister Shengyi. By then, she should have digested the Queen Mother's opportunity, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Okay. Jiang Luoli nodded. Then she sat cross-legged in the world cocoon and began to cultivate. Jun Xiaoyaro also arrived outside the elemental spirit world and began to absorb the power of the world in the miniature bubbles. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't intend to use the power of the world to improve much, but every little bit was worth it. Everything quieted down. In the outside world, Yu Hua King, Yu Yunchang, and the others were protecting the Jade Lake ancient land. Jiang Shengyi was also peacefully accepting the opportunity. She monopolized the entire Jade Lake baptism and her injuries were all healed. Not only that, her delicate body was crystal clear, white, and delicate. It was as if every cell in her body had undergone a metamorphosis. She looked completely new. Her primordial spirit had also undergone a metamorphosis and became crystal clear like glass. She looked even more graceful and beautiful. Next, she still needed to refine the tribulation transcending immortal lotus. At that time, Jiang Shengyi would completely transform. In addition to the Jade Lake Immortal Sutra and 9 Orifices stone embryo, While Jiang Xingyi's future might not be comparable to Zhun Xiaoyao's, it was definitely immeasurable. She wouldn't be any worse than Ling Yuan, Ji Qingyi, and the others. The entire buried emperor star fell into a momentary silence. Occasionally, various prime opportunities and even quasi-emperor opportunities would appear. However, their influence was limited. Only a true emperor-level opportunity could attract the attention of the buried emperor star's geniuses. Just as the entire buried emperor star fell into a short period of silence. The terrain here was undulating, like a dragon's vein, and also like a prehistoric ancient dragon lying in it. In the sky, a beautiful figure traversed the void. She was wearing a palace dress and had an otherworldly aura. Her fine black hair fluttered in the wind, and her cold and arrogant face carried a moving charm. Two jade-like dragon horns protruded from her black hair, indicating her bloodline identity. She had an excellent figure and was tall and slender. Her body was as smooth as white jade and her proportions were perfect. Her breasts were tall, her waist was slender, and her legs were as white as jade. Her snow-white feet were bare as she lightly tapped the void. Dragon-shaped Dao patterns spread out beneath her feet. If Zhun Xiaoyaro was here, he wouldn't be unfamiliar with this woman. It was Princess Longji, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. She was the first ancient freak to awaken in the Huangtian mystic realm. In the early days, Princess Longji was the only one who could exchange a few blows with Zhun Xiaoyaro. Later, however, Princess Longji was defeated again and again by Zhun Xiaoyaro, and she was forced to retreat. In the immortal ancient world, Princess Longji was completely subdued and called Zhun Xiaoyaro master. She became his mount. After Zulong was destroyed, Princess Longji was completely loyal and followed Zhun Xiaoyaro with peace of mind. Later, she also stepped on the Emperor Road and ultimate ancient road of the Huangtian mystic realm. Princess Longji wasn't bad. She was a sleeping ancient freak and had the bloodline of the ancient Azure Dragon Emperor. In addition, she had refined the corpse of the winged dragon in the immortal ancient world. Later, she followed Zhun Xiaoyaro and became Zhun Xiaoyao's mount. She also received the best cultivation treatment. Therefore, Princess Longji was definitely a first-class figure among the younger generation. She, who had been training along the ultimate ancient road, had also improved by leaps and bounds and reached the saint great perfection. Although there was still a gap between her and Zhun Xiaoyaro, Ling Yang, Jiyu Tiezi, and the Ascendant King. But among the top geniuses, she was considered pretty good. That feeling seems to be nearby, Princess Longji mumbled to herself. After coming to the buried Emperor Star, she had been trying her best to find opportunities. Not for other reasons, but because the buried Emperor Star had the ability to make people soar. As long as she could obtain a great opportunity, she would have the chance to become a dark horse and rise up. Princess Longji wasn't upset because of herself, but because of the white-robed figure who had left her far behind. If this continues, I won't even have the right to be master's mount. Princess Longji's cold face couldn't help but reveal a bitter expression. 30 years in the east, 30 years in the west. Who would have thought that the person who could fight with her and whom she regarded as an opponent? Now, not only had he become her master, but he had also left her far behind. This feeling was not good. Of course, this feeling was not because she was unwilling to accept it. Now, Princess Longji had completely submitted to Zhun Xiaoyaro. Now, she only wanted to become stronger so that Zhun Xiaoyaro would notice her again. He didn't just treat her as a faintly discernible mount. When she was separated from Zhun Xiaoyaro, Princess Longji actually missed the days when Zhun Xiaoyaro rode on her. That feeling is getting stronger and stronger. Princess Longji's beautiful eyes shone brighter. Not long ago, she felt that her bloodline seemed to be burning faintly, as if it had resonated with something. It was the power of the same origin as the Dragon Clan. Princess Longji was excited. If she could obtain this opportunity, she might have the chance to become a dark horse and rise up again. When that time came, Zhun Xiaoyaro would probably turn around and look at her. Princess Longji thought to herself as she began to go deeper into the mountains. Vaguely, there was a kind of dragon chi in the air. Princess Longji was even more certain that there was a great opportunity here. And it belonged to the Dragon Clan. In front of her, deep in the mountains, there was a stone tablet erected. An extremely ancient aura filled the air, and there was a row of dragon-shaped runes carved on it. It was the dragon language of the dragon clan. It was difficult for living beings who were not from the dragon clan to recognize it. Princess Longji glanced at it and recognized the meaning. 9 fingers shocking the heavens, 1 finger regretful. Chapter 793. At first glance, this sentence would make people confused and unable to make sense of it. Princess Longji did not know the meaning behind it either. She did not understand what this had to do with the opportunity here. Princess Longji thought for a while, then bit her lip and forced out a drop of blood. She dropped it on the stone tablet. Instantly, the stone tablet began to glow. Princess Longji's beautiful face glowed. Rumble. Strands of formation runes began to appear on the ground, as if an ancient formation had been activated. A place of opportunity was about to be born. Indeed. Princess Longji's beautiful face was flushed with excitement. No one would be able to remain calm in the face of an opportunity like this. However, just as Princess Longji was getting excited, a clear and melodious Loli's voice suddenly rang out. "Thank you, big sister, for your help. This troublesome formation is making me very vexed." Hearing this voice, Princess Longji was shocked. She abruptly turned her head and saw an exquisite and beautiful figure leaning against a tree branch with her feet propped up. It was a little girl who looked to be around 10 years old. She was wearing a snow-white dress, and her soft purple hair was bunned into 2 buns. 2 slender dragon horns grew from her snow-white forehead. Her face was the size of a palm, as delicate as carved jade. Her fair skin was rosy. Her large, gem-like eyes were watery and her eyelashes were long. She wore a necklace around her slender neck, with a purple bell hanging from it. She looked like a little angel in white, pure and cute. At this moment, this little girl in the white dress was leaning against the tree branch with her legs crossed. Linglong's small, sparkling feet swayed. She was licking a stick of candied fruit in her hand. However, unlike ordinary candied haws, the candied haws were wrapped in rare sacred herbs and immortal fruits. It could be said that this little girl, who was as cute as a fairy, would make anyone fall in love with her. They could not help but want to hug her and pinch her chubby cheeks. However, Princess Longji found it unbelievable. She was a little surprised. She could not sense any aura or cultivation from this little girl. She was like an ordinary cute little girl in the secular world. However, she was just an ordinary girl. Let's not talk about whether or not she could come to the buried Emperor Star. Even if she could come, how could she escape Princess Longji's senses? Princess Longji's gaze landed on the dragon horn on the girl's forehead. Dragon tribe? Which branch is that? Could it be the Dragon King Palace? Princess Longji was confused. There were many branches of the Dragon Clan, although most of them were of the lesser Dragon Clan. However, there were also a few true Dragon Clan forces. Princess Longji had never heard of such a girl in any Dragon Clan. However, the little girl in front of him had a harmless and adorable look on her face. It was really hard for him to raise his guard against her. "Little girl, did you come with someone else?" Princess Longji asked. She had also experienced many dangers along the way, but she did not let down her guard. Instead, she wanted to find out the little girl's background first. She believed that this little girl had followed her clan's genius to the buried Emperor Star. That's not it. She came alone. The little girl in the white dress opened her cherry mouth and stuck out her pink tongue to lick the sugar-coated haws. She looked very innocent and playful. Princess Longji frowned. Now, she had also sensed that something was amiss. After the little girl finished licking, she started chewing with her glistening canine teeth. She finished the sugar-coated haws in a few bites. Then, she stood up and patted her white dress. "I'm done eating. Let's get down to business." The little girl looked at Princess Longji with her purple eyes and smiled innocently. "Big sister, I want the opportunity here. Please leave." Purple eyes that were as resplendent as gemstones, and an innocent smile on her face. This little girl was enough to melt anyone's heart. However, the words she said made Princess Longji's eyes turn cold. Wasn't she telling her to get lost? She just said it in a more refreshing way. Wait, who are you? Before Princess Longji could finish, the little girl's eyes flashed with impatience. Her bare feet tapped lightly in the air as she clenched her fists and threw a simple punch towards Princess Longji. Dragon Emperor Codex. Princess Longji immediately felt an extreme sense of danger. She hurriedly used her ultimate move and her dragon chi shot out. But it was useless. Under the little girl's fist, her wild chi was torn apart. Fut! Princess Longji felt like she was being crushed by the ancient dragon's power. She spat out a mouthful of blood and her delicate body cracked. If it weren't for her dragon body and ancient royal bloodline, it was possible that this punch would shatter all the bones in her body. Who are you? Princess Longji spat out another mouthful of blood. Her beautiful eyes widened in disbelief. She was a sage in the Great Circle with the ancient royal bloodline. How could she not be a match for this little girl? Princess Longji had only felt this kind of pressure from Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro was now the number one of the younger generation. He was invincible. And this little girl in front of him, where did this monster come from? Hey, you can take Yaro Er's punch. Not bad. You must be a dragon too. Be my mount. The little girl was excited, as if she had found something interesting. Impossible. Princess Longji gritted her teeth. She only had one master, and that was Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro was the only one who could ride her. The little girl didn't say anything. She punched again. There was no fluctuation of spiritual chi. Her physical strength alone pierced through the void. Her fist lit up the sky and shook the heavens. She was a violent little girl with monstrous strength. Where did she come from? Princess Longji was shocked. Even if she was a dragon, her physical body wouldn't be this insane. In terms of physical strength, other than Jun Xiaoyao's body, how many people could take this little girl's punch? In the end, Princess Longji had no choice but to transform into her original form. A slender fairy dragon roared into the sky. Her aura was intimidating. Wow, so pretty. Riding this dragon to beat up the holy body must be so cool. The little girl clapped her hands and laughed. Her eyes curved into crescents. Fight against the holy body? Who are you? Princess Longji's heart skipped a beat when she heard the little girl mention the holy body. She thought of a certain identity that she couldn't believe. The holy body's nemesis. I, Long Yarrow of the ancient Void Dragon tribe, am also an invincible overlord. I want the opportunity here. I want to beat up the holy body too. I, Princess Yarrow am destined to dominate this world. I will make the holy body tremble at my feet. Long Yarrow little mouth spat out the lines of a Chunibya disease. She didn't feel embarrassed at all. Instead, she put her hands on her hips and puffed out her small breasts proudly. Princess Longji was stunned. Chapter 794. The Prodigy of the Ancient Void Dragon Race. The Overlord of the Overlord Bloodline. Either one of these two identities was shocking enough, and would definitely cause everyone to be wary of them. In everyone's mind, these two identities should be extremely domineering prodigies. Especially the Overlord. Although his name shook the ancient road, he was very mysterious. No one knew his true identity. In everyone's mind, the Overlord who hid his strength must be a domineering and ruthless hero. But who was this little girl in front of her? She was the Overlord. Princess Longji felt like her brain was not enough. She could not think. It was hard for her to associate the little lowly in front of her with the legendary tyrant. The sense of contradiction was too strong. It felt a little ridiculous. And the overlord body of the heavens was unparalleled. It was usually male. A female overlord body was unprecedented. But the truth before her eyes made Princess Longji believe this little girl's words. Her physical body was simply too terrifying. She could shatter the void with a raise of her hand. Only the combination of the overlord body of the heavens and the ancient void dragon bloodline could give birth to such a crazy body. It could be said that even if Long Yarrow did not use her dharmic powers, she could defeat a sage king with just her physical strength. Even a supreme sage would have a headache. What kind of monster is this? Princess Longji was shocked. Putting aside her identity as the overlord, The ancient Void Dragon clan's identity was terrifying enough. This race was definitely one of the top powers of the dragon race. There were few members in the race, but each one was extremely powerful. There were even a few dragon emperors of the ancient Void Dragon race. Their names were recorded in history, and they shocked many eras. Just this bloodline alone was enough to make Long Yarrow above all others. And with the help of the Overlord body, this little angelic girl was very likely to be one of the most powerful taboos on the ancient road of the ultimate path. Dragon Ride. Long Yarrow's figure flashed, and she landed on Princess Longji's back. Princess Longji struggled with all her might, but she could not break free from Long Yarrow's suppression. In the end, Long Yarrow still rode on her neck. Princess Longji felt humiliated. She was willing to be ridden by Jun Xiaoyaro. But now, she was being ridden by a little girl. Although her origin was indeed astonishing, it was only natural for her to have such a strong background. Oh, so boring. There's still some time before the opportunity appears. Long Yarrow sat cross-legged on the back of Princess Longji's main body. She rested her chin on her hand and pouted, bored to death. She was prepared to make trouble for Jun Xiaoyaro after obtaining the treasures of this place. As for Princess Longji herself, she was lying on the ground, paralyzed. Many of her dragon scales had cracked and blood was seeping out. It could be said that if Long Yarrow wanted to kill her, one move was enough. Master, Princess Longji thought of that peerless figure in white, suddenly feeling nostalgic. She really hoped that Jun Xiaoyaro could teach this little girl who was riding on top of her a lesson. Sure enough, that fluctuation originated from here. Suddenly, a sound came from afar. The sky prides followed the fluctuations and came to this place. After all, with the opening of the formation and Long Yarrow's actions, it was hard not to attract attention. Hey, that's a dragon? These sky prides were all from immortal forces and had extraordinary cultivations. When they saw the fairy dragon lying on the ground and the little girl sitting on its back, they were shocked. For a moment, he was at a loss. He, I was just feeling bored and a sandbag came to my door. Long Yarrow smiled innocently. She clenched her fists and a cracking sound could be heard. Princess Longji sighed secretly. Someone was going to be unlucky again. Time passed. On the other side, inside the door of life and death. In the giant bubble world, which was also outside the primordial spirit world. Jun Xiaoyaro, who was sitting cross-legged in the void, slowly opened his eyes. His white robe was spotless and his posture was straight. When he opened his eyes, his pupils were as black as ink, as deep and vast as the universe, making one want to sink into them. Although he did not emit any shocking aura, the surrounding void was collapsing inch by inch. This was shocking. Jun Xiaoyaro could also cause the void to collapse with a raise of his hand. This was because he had already completely absorbed the power of the miniature bubble world around him. The number of Sumeru worlds in his body had also increased from 36 to 108. In other words, Jun Xiaoyaro could use the power of 108 Sumeru worlds with a raise of his hand. This power was terrifying to the extreme and exceeded the limits of the physical body. The power of just over 100 Sumeru worlds has already increased the power of my physical body by leaps and bounds. If I were to master all 3,000 Sumeru worlds, then my physical body would probably be able to transcend the limitations of the physical body and reach a whole new level, Jun Xiaoyaro said to himself. It was rumored that a big shot who had truly become an emperor with a physical body. Their physical bodies had already surpassed the concept of a physical body. The blood in their bodies was like a galaxy and the cells were like ancient stars. In the legends, the primordial god who created the world was like this. That god's eyes turned into the sun and moon, his limbs turned into the four poles, his skin turned into the earth, and his blood turned into rivers. Jun Xiaoyaro felt that in the future, he might be able to transcend his physical body and embark on this extreme path. That was what true immortality was like, everlasting through the ages. In addition to the Sumeru worlds, Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe had also improved. After absorbing some of the power of the world, Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe had expanded a little. According to Jun Xiaoyao's vision as a traveler, it was around a light year in diameter. A distance of 1 light-year sounded quite far. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was currently in the 9 heavens immortal realm in the fantasy world. The Huangtian immortal realm alone was extremely vast, let alone the entire immortal realm. Ordinary saints would not be able to travel across the entire Huangtian immortal realm in their lifetime. It was obvious how vast the 9 heavens immortal realm was. Besides, there were also mysterious places like the outer realm, the burial ground, and the realm sea. In the context of such a vast world, Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe with a diameter of 1 light-year was indeed like a speck of dust. The inner universe was closely related to Jun Xiaoyao's cultivation. The expansion and evolution of the inner universe would also improve Jun Xiaoyao's cultivation. It was because it was his Tao. It seems like I still have to find some rare items and put them in the inner universe to accelerate the expansion of the inner universe. If the size of my inner universe is the same as the Huangtian immortal realm, then I'm almost invincible. If the size of my inner universe is the same as the 9 heavens immortal realm, then I'm truly invincible. If the size of my inner universe exceeds the 9 heavens immortal realm and is limitless, then I'll be a god above everything. Jun Xiaoyaro made a judgment in his heart. However, the expansion of the inner universe required a vast amount of energy and world power. This was much more difficult than transforming the Sumeru worlds. If I can find a world tree, Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. Right now, what he needed the most was a world tree. If he could plant a world tree in the inner universe, then his inner universe could continue to evolve. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was thinking, the primordial spirit world suddenly trembled. It seems like Luo Li is about to succeed. Jun Xiaoyaro stood up and looked over. Chapter 795. Inside the primordial spirit world, Jiang Luoli finished absorbing the power of the world cocoon and also finished cultivating. Her delicate body shone with radiance, and her skin was tender and translucent. Her bright eyes were bright and lively. Zhongyu was as beautiful as the heavens and earth, like a beautiful fairy. 8 strands of celestial qi wrapped around Jiang Luoli's body, making her look like a little fairy. She was mesmerizing. After absorbing the power of the world cocoon, Jiang Luoli's body had completely transformed from the primordial spirit Tao body to the primordial spirit immortal body. Although it was only a difference of 1 word, the difference was like heaven and earth. After all, anything related to the word immortal was extraordinary. And with the primordial spirit immortal body's ability, it wouldn't be difficult to form the 9th strand of immortal qi in the future. 9 was the limit. Even the mortal immortal body of the Ren immortal sect, or Gu Tiezi and the others, could only form 9 strands of immortal qi at most. Jun Xiaoyaro had broken the limit and cultivated 12 strands of immortal qi. However, because he was an ancient anomaly, he could not be used as a comparison. Then, Jiang Luoli's little face became solemn, and her small hands began to form hand seals like butterflies. Immortal patterns spread out, and her primordial spirit immortal body resonated with the primordial spirit world like never before. Come in. Jiang Luoli yelled. The entire giant bubble world began to tremble. Although the primordial spirit world was in a broken state, its vigorous power was still impressive. Jiang Luoli refined it into her body, and her cultivation level began to skyrocket. Finally, she reached the late-stage Saint King. This level naturally couldn't be compared to Jun Xiaoyao's, but she was definitely at the top of the ancient road of ultimate prodigies. And this was only the beginning of the refinement. When Jiang Luoli finished breaking in with the primordial spirit world in the future, her cultivation level would rise again. As the primordial spirit world was absorbed and refined, only the black and white river, which was about to dry up, was left in the door of life and death. Without the primordial spirit world as its source, the black and white river would eventually disappear completely. 8 strands of immortal qi, late-stage Saint King. Not bad, you are already a minor expert. Jun Xiaoyaro stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He sized up Jiang Luoli and smiled faintly. Although in his eyes, Jiang Luoli's cultivation was almost negligible. But for Jiang Luoli, this was a huge improvement and worthy of encouragement. Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's praise, Jiang Luoli smiled sweetly, feeling very happy in her heart. To her, the happiest thing was to receive the affirmation of her sweetheart. This meant that her hard work and cultivation had not been in vain. Jun Xiaoyao had always taken note of her. Jiang Luoli threw herself into Jun Xiaoyao's arms again. Her smooth and tender little face was pressed against Jun Xiaoyao's chest, her face full of tenderness and naivety. Jun Xiaoyao sighed helplessly. This girl was getting more and more attached to him. But it seemed like it was also like this in the past. She was like a pendant, always hanging on his body. All right, let's leave this place first. Jun Xiaoyao patted Jiang Luoli's shoulder. The two of them also left the door of life and death together. After stepping out of the door of life and death, Jiang Luoli stretched her back, revealing the beautiful curves of a young girl's body. We finally left that damned place where there's no daylight, Jiang Luoli mumbled. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, had a strange feeling all of a sudden. He cast his eyes far away. Big brother Xiaoyao, what's wrong? Jiang Luoli turned her little head and looked at Jun Xiaoyao. That aura. Dragon Qi. It seems that another emperor-level opportunity is about to appear. But Jun Xiaoyao muttered to himself. The appearance of an emperor-level opportunity would generally cause a huge commotion. Jun Xiaoyao vaguely sensed a dragon aura as well. He thought that it might be an opportunity left behind by a certain dragon clan elder. Of course, Jun Xiaoyao was not concerned about this. But he vaguely felt an aura. The aura of an old enemy. Could it be the Overlord? That kind of feeling only belonged to an old enemy. Except for the mysterious Overlord who had never shown his true body, who had always been hiding in the dark. Jun Xiaoyao could not think of a second person. To be honest, Jun Xiaoyao was really a little interested in this Overlord. To be able to make Xiong Fei the Overlord body of the heavens a pawn. This was enough to prove that the Overlord's talent and strength should far surpass Xiong Fei's. Great Overlord, I'd like to see just how capable a mighty figure like you actually is. Jun Xiaoyao chuckled and stepped into the air. Big brother Xiaoyao, are we going to find Sister Shengyi? Jiang Luoli asked. Not now. I want to meet someone more interesting. Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a sneer. His eyes were as cold as ice. He had not forgotten about the Overlord Star and the Desolate Star. The desolation of the desolate ancient sacred palace was also because of the Overlord Ancestral Hall and the Overlord Star Kang family. Therefore, Jun Xiaoyao would not hold back at all against the Overlord lineage. If there was a chance, he did not mind killing the Overlord directly. Just as Jun Xiaoyao and Jiang Luoli were rushing to the emperor-level opportunity. At the Jade Pool ancient land. Jiang Shengyi had also completely refined the Tribulation Transcendence Immortal Lotus. She had been reborn, and her strength had reached a peak compared to before. The nine-orifice Linglong's Dao heart had also begun to take shape. After Jiang Shengyi comprehended the Jade Pool Immortal Sutra and absorbed the energy of the nine-orifice stone embryo, she would be able to completely condense the nine-orifice Linglong's Dao heart. At this moment, Jiang Shengyi stepped out of the void. She had skin of ice and bones of jade, and her celestial appearance was peerless. As her snow-white clothes fluttered, her charm could topple the world. There are no peerless beauties in 1,000 years, but those who are pleasing to the eye are beauties. Even the Ascendant King, who was guarding outside, could not help but sigh. Who was the Ascendant King? The Ascendant King was a supreme outlawed sky pride of the Jin dynasty, and a male god in many female cultivators' dreams. To be able to make him say a word of praise. It was enough to prove that Jiang Shengyi was truly a peerless beauty. Why? Are you tempted? Unfortunately, she's young Master Jun's woman. You should give up. Yu Yunchang teased from the side. She knew how high the Ascendant King's standards were. He would not even look at ordinary women. To be able to make him sigh like this, Jiang Shengyi was undoubtedly a rare beauty in this world. No. I'm just lamenting. If I were to fight her now, I wouldn't be completely confident, said the Ascendant King. What he was most concerned about was Jiang Shengyi's cultivation. The current Jiang Shengyi, in terms of cultivation strength, was indeed a supreme outlawed existence. She's so outstanding. Yu Yunchang was also a little dazed. Not only was she a peerless beauty, Her cultivation was also the best among her peers. Yu Yunchang couldn't help but feel ashamed of her inferiority when facing such an outstanding woman. No wonder only a woman like her can receive special treatment from young Master Jun. Yu Yunchang's face was gloomy. On the other side, Princess Celestial Silkworm, who had transformed into a golden silkworm, looked at Jiang Xingyi with disappointment. If the current Jiang Xingyi were to fight her, she would definitely have a great advantage. As soon as Jiang Xingyi stepped out of the Naka Lake, she could not help but look into the distance with longing. She could not wait to go to the Gate of Life and Death to look for Jun Xiaoyao and Jiang Luoli. At this moment, the Ascendant King spoke. "Miss Jiang, please wait. I've received an interesting piece of news." "Oh, please speak, young master." Jiang Xingyi nodded slightly. Jiang Xingyi was grateful that the Ascendant King was willing to protect her. "My Ascendant Jin Dynasty's prodigy found out that there seems to be another emperor-level opportunity of fortune. However, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that someone related to Brother Jun seems to have been suppressed." "There's such a thing?" Jiang Xingyi was surprised. She knew that although Jun Xiaoyao's character was cold and indifferent, he treated the people around him extremely well. If there was such a thing, Jun Xiaoyao would definitely rush over if he knew about it. "Therefore, I feel that we should go to that opportunity of fortune to take a look. Perhaps Brother Jun will go there too," said the Ascendant King. "That makes sense. Since that's the case, let's go." Jiang Xingyi nodded slightly. She, Princess Celestial Silkworm, the Ascendant King, Yu Yunchang, and the others all rushed to the Emperor-level opportunity of fortune. Chapter 796. At the location of the Emperor-level opportunity of fortune. The surroundings of the primitive mountain range were already filled with prodigies. However, at this moment, these prodigies were all looking at the little girl who was casually sitting on the dragon's body with a horrified expression. The young master of the ancient heaven demon domain was defeated by a single punch. The sword son of the Clear Heart Sword sect was also defeated by a single punch. And the prodigy of the golden horned divine rhinoceros clan. This clan has an unparalleled physical body and has mastered the extreme realm of strength. In the end, his physical body was also shattered by a single punch. The minds of the surrounding prodigies were a little blank. They were completely unable to think. They could only stare blankly at the little girl in the white dress who looked like a little angel. It could be said that anyone who saw her for the first time would be stunned. This little girl was too cute. She was like the darling of heaven and earth, gathering all the beauty, innocence in her. But the things she had done had nothing to do with being pure and innocent. Beside her was a mountain. It was the prodigies who had been killed by her, piled up into a mountain. Almost none of the corpses were intact. They were all beaten to a pulp, their bones shattered, and blood flowed everywhere. It was as miserable as it could be. Most importantly, these prodigies were all killed by a single punch from the little girl. The little girl did not use any magic power or divine ability. This was simply ridiculous and unbelievable. Where did this monster come from? Or did the old witch regain her youth? The surrounding prodigies had deep shock in their eyes. Their hearts could not calm down for a long time. It was not that they were narrow-minded and could not recognize Long Yarrow-Er's identity. It was that Long Yarrow-Er had always been hidden by the Overlord Ancestral Hall and the ancient Void Dragon clan. Ever since she was born, she had been cultivating in the Void realm created by the ancient Void Dragon clan. Therefore, outsiders did not know about her. "Weak, all of you are so weak." Long Yarrow-Er sat on the fairy dragon. Her small hand took out a candied hawthorn from her spatial artifact and chewed on it as she muttered. "My sandbag is so good. He can take a beating so well. Why are these people so weak?" Long Yarrow-Er shook her small head. The sandbag she was talking about was none other than the hegemonic body of the firmament, Xiong Fei, who had died in the hands of Jun Xiaoyao. Only Xiong Fei, who also had the tyrant body of the heavens, was qualified to be Long Yarrow-Er's sparring partner. Otherwise, any other heaven's favorite would have been crushed by this punch. Who is that little girl? She has dragon horns on her head, so she should be from the dragon clan. But I've never heard of any dragon clan having such an abnormal existence. Moreover, she only dealt with her enemies with a single punch. She didn't use any divine abilities or spells. We couldn't find out anything about her background. A genius shook his head. Every undying force had their own unique techniques and abilities that were famous throughout the immortal realm. As long as he used it, he would be recognized by others. However, Long Yarrow dealt with any prodigy with a simple punch, so it was impossible to use this method to identify her origin. But her physical body is truly abnormal. She has such a terrifying power in such a small body. I think that only the Son of God of the Jun family's sacred body of the ancients would be able to withstand it. The surrounding prodigies were all discussing. "Hey, why aren't you guys coming? Let's attack together." "I don't mind," Long Yarrow shouted. She was bored. Hearing this, the surrounding prodigies didn't step forward. Instead, they all retreated a distance. If it were any other emperor-level opportunity of fortune, they would have charged forward like rabid dogs. But now, looking at the mountain of corpses beside Long Yarrow, no one would joke about their own lives. Scaredy cat. Long Yarrow pouted and continued eating her candid haws. Princess Longji, who was being sat on by her, had already lost her temper. It wasn't that she didn't want to fight back, but that she couldn't. She really hoped that Jun Xiaoyaro would come. However, she remembered that she was just Jun Xiaoyao's mount. Princess Longji felt that even if Jun Xiaoyaro knew about the situation here, he probably wouldn't care too much. Then, time passed. A few days later, the stone tablet that Princess Longji had activated suddenly released a blinding light. The array was also completely opened. A terrifying dragon aura burst out from it. At the same time, a blurry figure appeared in the void. That figure suppressed heaven and earth, as if standing in the center of the universe. His face was blurry. Only the 2 dragon horns on his head showed his identity as the dragon tribe's emperor. However, some of the more observant prodigies noticed it. The illusory figure only had 4 fingers on one hand. In other words, one of the 10 fingers on both hands was missing. There were only 9 fingers left. This was inconceivable. One had to know that even a saint could regrow a severed limb, let alone a great emperor. Even the body could be regrown, let alone a finger. However, this dragon tribe's emperor was missing a finger. This was enough to prove that it wasn't that this emperor couldn't recover, but that he didn't want to. 9 fingers, a dragon tribe's emperor. This distinct characteristic made all the prodigies think of a famous dragon tribe emperor. The 9-fingered sage dragon emperor. This emperor was definitely a legend of the dragon tribe. Just like most great emperors. Ever since he was born, he had dazzled the universe and defeated his peers. He was unparalleled. When he was young, he had stunned the entire era. Everyone thought that the 9-finger sage dragon emperor would be like the other great emperors in history. After all, it was rare to see a miserable great emperor like the ancient chaos great emperor. Even the 9-finger sage dragon emperor himself thought so. Therefore, when he was young, he challenged all his enemies and was invincible. However, what everyone didn't expect was, the 9-finger sage dragon emperor was defeated. When he was at his most arrogant and unruly youth, he had lost to a mysterious prodigy. It was during that battle that he had said that if he lost, he would cut off one of his fingers. In the end, he really lost. Moreover, he lost within 100 moves. This battle almost made the 9-finger sage dragon emperor doubt his life. There was actually such a heaven-defying existence in the younger generation. After the 9-finger sage dragon emperor was defeated, he cut off one of his fingers and asked that mysterious prodigy to leave his name. That mysterious prodigy only left behind a sentence. "Who in the world doesn't know you?" After writing this sentence, he left directly. No one knew where that mysterious prodigy came from or which faction he was from. After that, the 9-finger sage dragon emperor wasn't discouraged. After all, he was someone who had the potential to become a great emperor. His Tao heart couldn't be shattered so easily. He was even braver after the humiliation and didn't try to recover that finger. Instead, he used it as an oath and worked even harder. Finally, he became a great emperor in his era. His name was the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor. That defeat was the only defeat that the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor had in his life. However, it was also that defeat that allowed the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor to temper his Dao heart and forcefully become a great emperor. Therefore, it was a blessing in disguise. However, from the beginning to the end, everyone had a question in their hearts. Since that mysterious prodigy was so powerful that he could defeat the young Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor, then he could definitely become a great emperor in that era. However, there was no news of that prodigy becoming a great emperor in that era. It was as if he was buried in history and no one knew about him. In the end, it was a mystery. Chapter 797. Of course, the prodigies only knew about the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's life. They knew that the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor had lost to a mysterious prodigy when he was young and had lost one of his fingers. However, this did not affect the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's reputation. His name would also be recorded in history. What everyone cared about now was the opportunity left behind by the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor. However, when they saw Long Yarrow all the prodigies withered like eggplants that had been hit by frost. With Long Yarrow around, it was almost impossible for the other prodigies to obtain the opportunity. It's actually this the arch? Long Yarrow's purple eyes shone brightly. A bright smile appeared on her delicate little face. Her guardian, Long Yuan, had told her some of the dragon race's history. Naturally, he had also told her about the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor. Other than losing to a mysterious prodigy, his life was absolutely brilliant. The opportunity left behind would naturally not be bad. When Yarrow obtains this opportunity, I will find that divine body to settle the score. Long Yarrow thought happily. The divine body and the overlord body would have a battle eventually. Together with her human punching bag, the overlord body, Xiong Fei, had been killed by Jun Xiaoyao. She would find Jun Xiaoyao sooner or later. Princess Longji, who was being pressed down by Long Yarrow was also shocked. She suddenly understood the meaning of the sentence on the stone tablet. Nine-Finger shocking the heavens was referring to the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's glorious life. Only one finger regretful was referring to the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's loss to that mysterious prodigy when he was young and had lost one of his fingers. However, when she thought about how the opportunity that originally belonged to her was going to be taken away by Long Yarrow Princess Longji felt aggrieved. If she could obtain the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's opportunity, she would definitely be able to rise again. She would regain her status as an ancient freak and the descendant of the Emperor of the Ancients. Long Yarrow chewed the candied haws and swallowed them into her stomach. She was about to enter the space below the stone tablet to explore. However, her movements suddenly paused. She felt a faint sense of danger. At that moment, a surprised voice suddenly sounded. "This is the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor?" Hearing that voice, all the prodigies suddenly turned their gazes, and saw several figures stepping through the void. It's the Ascension King, and the goddess of the Jiang family. The newcomers were none other than Jiang Shengyi, Feather King, Yu Yunchang, and the others. The Jade Lake ancient land they were in was slightly closer to this place. Therefore, they arrived first. The Ascension King was also surprised when he saw the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's silhouette in midair. He didn't expect it to be the opportunity of this dragon clan's big shot. At the side, Jiang Shengyi's gaze fell on the fairy dragon lying on the ground. Princess Longji? Jiang Shengyi was surprised. She didn't expect the person who was related to Jun Xiaoyao to be Princess Longji. In the beginning, when Princess Longji and Jun Xiaoyao were enemies, Jiang Shengyi was also very hostile towards her. But as Princess Longji was subdued, the animosity dissipated. Jiang Shengyi, seeing Jiang Shengyi's arrival, Princess Longji's gaze was complicated. She had mixed feelings. At this moment, Jiang Shengyi's snow-white robes fluttered in the wind. She was like a goddess who was admired by thousands. Her looks were on par with her strength. Once, she and Jiang Shengyi were on the same starting line. In fact, she was even slightly stronger than Jiang Shengyi in the beginning. Now that things had changed, Jiang Shengyi had left her in the dust. What made Princess Longji even more upset was the close relationship between Jiang Xingyi and Jun Xiaoyao. One was Jun Xiaoyao's closest person. The other was only Jun Xiaoyao's mount. The difference in their statuses was too great. Princess Longji was very envious of Jiang Xingyi. Very envious. "You're here to snatch this opportunity?" Long Yao Er's little face turned serious. After all, the Ascendant King and Jiang Xingyi were both outlawed sky prides. Even if she was very strong and confident in herself, she could not ignore them completely. "You're a dragon?" The Ascendant King looked at Long Yao Er. Because Long Yao Er had been hidden for a long time, the Ascendant King could not figure out her background. Jiang Xingyi frowned slightly. Although the little girl in front of him was extremely cute. Looking at the mountain of corpses around her, he knew that she was not a kind person. Not to mention that Princess Longji was suppressed by her. "I'm warning you, don't mess with Yao Er. Yao Er's fists don't have eyes." Long Yao Er clenched her fists and threatened. She deliberately pretended to be ferocious, but on the contrary, she looked extremely cute and fierce. "Do you know who the dragon you suppressed is related to?" The Ascendant King asked calmly. "It doesn't matter who it is. Yao Er, I'll beat them up whenever I see them." Long Yao Er pouted. "Jun Xiaoyao." The Ascendant King smiled. "What? That dragon is related to the son of God of the Jun family?" "Oh, it seems to be Princess Longji. She is indeed related to the son of God of the Jun family. She seems to be his mount." Many sky prides regained their senses. When Long Yao Er heard this, she was not shocked but happy instead. Her big eyes shone brightly and her fighting spirit soared. "That saves Yao Er a lot of effort." "Why?" Long Yao Er's reaction puzzled the Ascendant King. At this moment, a calm and gentle voice suddenly sounded from above the firmament underworld. "Because she is the Overlord." As soon as the voice sounded, two figures crossed the void and arrived. Everyone's gaze fell on him. "It's the son of God of the Jun family," someone exclaimed. A young man and woman arrived. The man was dressed in white and the woman was beautiful. They were Jun Xiaoyao and Jiang Luoli. Xiaoyao, Luo Li. Jiang Xingyi was overjoyed to see the two of them arrive safely. She was finally relieved. "Sister Xingyi." Jiang Luoli saw Jiang Xingyi and immediately rushed over. The two beauties hugged each other with joy on their faces. They had not seen each other for a long time. The other sky prides were shocked by Jun Xiaoyao's words. I didn't hear wrongly, did I? The son of God of the Jun family said that the little girl is the overlord?" Everyone present was stunned. Their minds went blank as they thought they had heard wrongly. After all, this was too unbelievable. They could not wrap their heads around it. "Brother Jun, this." The Ascendant King was also speechless. After all, Long Yao Er's image was too different from the rumor of a shrewd overlord hiding in the dark. She is not only the overlord, but also the supreme outlawed sky pride of the ancient Void Dragon clan. Jun Xiaoyao looked at Long Yao Er with a deep and sharp gaze. As for why he was so sure, naturally, it was because Jun Xiaoyao's former opponent, Long Aotian, had obtained the ancient Void Dragon clan's opportunity inheritance. Right now, he also sensed the unique fluctuations of the ancient Void Dragon clan from Long Yao Er, together with the dragon horns on her head. Without a doubt. The cute little girl in the white dress in front of him. She was the sky pride of the ancient Void Dragon clan and the legendary overlord. Chapter 798. Jun Xiaoyao's words were so deafening that the minds of the sky prides were buzzing. It was like thunder rolling in the sky, and no one dared to believe it. This little girl is an overlord. Many people's brains short-circuited. This was extremely surprising. Because the overlords that were born in the previous epochs were all mighty and strong men. They were domineering and could sweep the world. But now, looking at the cute little girl in front of them, no one could imagine how domineering she was. Yes, only the heavenly tyrant body has such a terrifying physical body. That's right, and she's also a sky pride of the ancient Void Dragon race. The combination of these two bloodlines can indeed reach the pinnacle of her physical body. No wonder her physical body is so terrifying. She can defeat any sky prides with one punch. Everyone came back to their senses and realized that this identity was the most suitable for Long Yarrow's performance. It was just that her appearance was too deceiving, so no one thought of it at first. But in an instant, everyone thought of something. Weren't they going to witness the peerless battle between the Overlord and the sacred body today? Previously, at the 70th checkpoint of the ancient road, the battle between Jun Xiaoyaro and Xiong Fei had attracted the attention of countless cultivators on the ancient road of the ultimate ancient road. After all, the battle between the sacred body and the tyrant body was the most exciting battle in every epoch. But that battle was beyond everyone's expectations. Xiong Fei had no resistance at all in Jun Xiaoyao's hands. In the end, he had to rely on the blood of curse to slightly affect Jun Xiaoyao. It could be said that everyone was very disappointed in that battle. Xiong Fei was simply a disgrace to the tyrant body. But later, news spread that Xiong Fei was not the Overlord. Everyone's interest was piqued again, and they were all looking forward to the battle between the domineering Overlord and Jun Xiaoyao. But now, looking at the fierce little girl in front of them, everyone inexplicably felt like they had been fooled. Different from everyone's reaction. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm and indifferent, and there was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. He did not look down on Long Yarrow because of her appearance. Although at the beginning when he saw Long Yarrow, Jun Xiaoyao was indeed a little surprised. He even wondered if he had sensed wrongly. But in an instant, he understood that this little girl was indeed the Overlord. There was no mistaking the aura of an old enemy. Since it was confirmed that it was the Overlord, Jun Xiaoyao naturally would not underestimate him. Not to mention, he also sensed another kind of energy fluctuation from Long Yarrow. Jun Xiaoyao was no stranger to this kind of fluctuation. The fluctuation of the 9 great heavenly books. Long Yarrow was also one of the heavenly bookmasters. But thinking about it, with Long Yarrow's noble status, it was reasonable for her to have a heavenly book. Jun Xiaoyao did not know which heavenly book Long Yarrow was in control of. However, he was determined to obtain the heavenly book from Long Yarrow. On the other side, it was also Long Yarrow's first time meeting Jun Xiaoyao. She immediately felt a strong sense of danger. That sense of danger was something she had never felt before. Even just now, the Ascendant King, Jiang Xingyi, and the rest did not give her such a strong sense of danger. Intuition told Long Yarrow that this white-robed man in front of her was extremely dangerous. But at the same time, when Long Yarrow saw Jun Xiaoyao's pitilessly handsome face, she was stunned. Purple, I could not help but be stunned. A sense of amazement arose spontaneously. Super handsome. Although Long Yarrow had heard a lot of news about Jun Xiaoyao, she had also heard that Jun Xiaoyao's appearance was as good as his strength, the best of his generation. But when she really saw it, she was still a little shocked. No, I am the Overlord. He has a divine body and even killed my punching bag. I must beat him up. But he is really good looking. It would be a pity to kill him like this. Why don't I suppress him and make him a boy toy? Long Yarrow muttered to herself. However, his words were heard by everyone in the surroundings. The atmosphere fell silent. The faces of the geniuses were full of excitement. Suppress Jun Xiaoyao and make him a boy toy? Even though it was the dream of every woman. But who in the 9 heavens and 10 lands had the capability and qualification to do so? Even if they could suppress Jun Xiaoyao, who would dare to treat him as a boy toy? Wouldn't they be afraid of the Jun clan behind him? However, when the crowd recalled Long Yarrow's identity, it did not seem like they were that scared. The Overlord Ancestral Hall and the ancient Void Dragon tribe were indeed unstoppable in the 9 heavens immortal realm. Oh, treating me as a boy toy? Jun Xiaoyao smiled. The smile was icy, without the slightest hint of warmth. It was his first time hearing someone saying something like that to him since he was born. What is it? Can't I? My Yarrow is the Overlord. She is destined to trample you under her feet. But I don't want to hurt your face, so come to me obediently. Long Yarrow placed her hands on her waist and raised her chin as she harumphed. The surrounding geniuses were a little jealous of Jun Xiaoyao. Being taken in as a boy toy by Long Yarrow This kind of amazing status and cute little loli should be a good thing that many men could only wish for. However, Jun Xiaoyaro was not interested in it. Was he a lolicon? Jun Xiaoyaro glanced at Jiang Luoli with the corner of his eye. No, that was definitely not the case. Long Yaro was like a naughty kid to Jun Xiaoyaro. Naughty? Just beat her up. Jun Xiaoyaro happened to hate naughty kids too. You've injured my son of God's mount. What are you going to do? Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the fairy dragon lying on the ground. When Princess Longji heard this, she was touched. Even though Jun Xiaoyaro was only treating her as his mount, he still cared about her. What do you want? Long Yaro harumphed. What do you say if I kill you? Jun Xiaoyaro smirked coldly. All the surrounding geniuses felt a chill down their spines. To be honest, if they were in Long Yaro's shoes, they might not be able to do it to such an innocent and adorable loli. How dare you? Long Yaro's amethyst eyes widened. She bared her teeth, revealing her sparkling little canine teeth. Her face was ferocious. Try me then, Jun Xiaoyaro said calmly. Lolis from the third dimension were all naughty kids. Jun Xiaoyaro would not show mercy. Wah, Jun Xiaoyao, you've made Yaro furious. My Yaro will make you a punching bag and boy toy. Long Yaro shouted. She moved her body and threw out a fist. An incomparably terrifying power erupted from his tiny body. Her fist shattered the sky and blasted toward Jun Xiaoyaro. Everything in its path was shattered. It was terrifying to the extreme. It was as if the ancestral dragon had awakened. The violent divine power crushed the void. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Long Yaro and Jun Xiaoyaro. This was a real battle between an overlord and a sage. Chapter 799. No one had expected the battle between the overlord and the sacred physique to come so suddenly. In the previous epochs, such a battle would have been recorded in history. It would have been treated as a classic battle by countless geniuses in the future and studied repeatedly. But now, the battle had come so suddenly. However, the geniuses present could also feel that many invisible gazes were looking at them. The invisible pressure made many geniuses break out in cold sweat. It seems that many big shots have noticed this place, said one of the geniuses in shock. At this moment, many people on the ultimate ancient road were looking at the buried emperor star. There were the executors of the ancient road and the big shots of the major forces. They had been paying attention to the changes in the buried emperor star. Naturally, they wouldn't miss such an epic battle. Yaro, this is a battle you must go through. Outside the buried emperor star, deep in the starry sky, a hunchbacked old man with dragon horns and a white beard sighed softly. He was Long Yaro's guardian, Long Yuan. His cultivation had reached the fourth stage of the supremacy realm, the great heavenly venerable realm. From this, one could see how important Long Yaro was to the ancient void dragon clan. Of course, Jun Xiaoyao's side wasn't empty either. There seemed to be a pair of eyes observing them in the dark. At the Imperial Opportunity Land, Long Yaro's fist tore through the sky. It was just a small fist, but it seemed to be able to shatter heaven and earth. However, Long Yaro didn't hit Jun Xiaoyao's face because she was afraid that it would hurt Jun Xiaoyao's face. Instead, it was aimed at his chest. This punch made all the geniuses present feel incomparably fearful. Previously, Long Yaro had relied on this punch to kill all the geniuses who had provoked her. The dead geniuses piled up into a mountain. However, bang! An ear-shattering roar sounded. At the center of the collision, the void collapsed, revealing pitch-black spatial turbulence. Everyone's eyes turned to look at him. The Jun family's son of God won't follow in the footsteps of the previous geniuses, right? Asked one of the geniuses suspiciously. No, no, no. You're thinking too much. Some people immediately refuted. Although Long Yaro's physical body was abnormally strong. But then again, Jun Xiaoyao's physical body was not to be trifled with. You actually blocked it. Long Yaro's surprised voice sounded. With his left hand behind his back, Jun Xiaoyao extended his right hand and collided with Long Yaro's fist. A light palm blocked Long Yaro's small fist that could shatter the heavens. Long Yaro's purple eyes widened in disbelief. This was because she was used to sending all her enemies flying with a single punch. Therefore, at this moment, he was not used to it. Not bad. As expected of the combination of the tyrant body of the heavens and the ancient void dragon bloodline, Jun Xiaoyaro said. To be able to get a good evaluation from him, it was enough to prove how shocking Long Yaro's strength was. Even Jun Xiaoyaro could feel a terrifying power surging toward him, causing his hand to feel slightly numb. Long Yaro don't need your comments. Long Yaro raised her eyebrows. Jun Xiaoyao's words sounded like he was commenting on a junior. She was the overlord, how could she not care about her reputation? Boom. 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 Long Yaro punched again. Every punch stirred up endless waves in space, exploding like air cannons. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, just calmly extended his hand. Every time the fist and palm collided, there was a thunderous sound. Oh my god, only the son of God of the Jun family can take this violent dragon lady's attack, right? Some of the geniuses exclaimed. Long Yaro's punch was powerful enough to kill a saint, yet Jun Xiaoyaro was able to block the attack with ease. Don't be so smug. Long Yaro snorted and punched again. This punch was different from the previous ones. It carried the power of divine powers. An extremely domineering fist intent emerged, enough to destroy the heavens. Tyrant fist. This was the unique divine power of the tyrant body. With a punch, there was no self in it, and it was invincible. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, activated the Kuan-Peng divine power and performed the Kuan-Peng infinite divine fist. The power of 100,000 divine elephants combined with the sacred body of the ancients and the divine elephant overpowering divine elephant clashed with Long Yaro. The collision of the two fists swept through the surrounding heaven and earth. The undulating mountains began to collapse, and rocks rolled down. Other than the nine-fingered sage dragon emperor's land of opportunity, which was protected by a formation, the rest of the land began to shatter. This kind of fluctuation was boundlessly terrifying. Bang! After another collision, Long Yaro was knocked back 1,000 feet, and her fist was red. She looked at her fist in shock, unable to believe it. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro also took a few steps back. There was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. One had to know that in terms of divine powers and spells, there might be a few supreme taboos who could exchange blows with him. However, in terms of physical strength, Jun Xiaoyaro had never met a match. However, in terms of physical strength, Jun Xiaoyaro did not have the absolute upper hand. This was enough to prove Long Yaro's strength. Jun Xiaoyaro had to admit. To be able to become an overlord, she was still something. At least she was not as boring as the previous overlord body, Xiong Fei. How can your physical body be so freakish? Is a sacred body that broke through the 10 shackles so powerful? Long Yaro still couldn't believe it. She could only attribute it to Jun Xiaoyaro having a complete sacred body of the ancients. Little did she know that Jun Xiaoyaro had also cultivated the Physique book. His physical body had also been reforged by the qi of all creation, and he had the physique of an emperor. This was far stronger than a simple sacred body of the ancients. Although Long Yaro also had the bloodline of the ancient void dragon in addition to the overlord body. However, compared to the two, it was still slightly inferior. You should be glad that you are a member of the ancient void dragon clan. Otherwise, with just the overlord body of the heavens, you would be beaten to tears. Jun Xiaoyaro sneered. How dare you look down on me? I, Long Yaro am an invincible overlord. I am destined to trample you under my feet. Long Yaro was so angry that her face turned red. She no longer restrained herself and erupted with the absolute power of an overlord. Boom! Purple chi and blood surged into the 9 heavens imperial court. Long Yaro's purple eyes emitted a deep purple light. She activated the bloodline of the overlord body of the heavens, and the strength of her physical body skyrocketed again. The overlord is invincible. Long Yaro punched continuously. The purple fist light illuminated the sky, dyeing the entire buried emperor star into a magnificent purple color. Many geniuses looked up at the sky and were extremely shocked when they saw this scene. TSK, TSK. The overlord of the age has been hidden by the two major forces until now. I didn't expect her to shock the world as soon as she made a move. In the depths of the universe, a big shot from an immortal force side. Finally, there is someone who can slightly restrain the son of God of the Jun family. A mysterious existence whispered. It seemed that he didn't have a good impression of Jun Xiaoyao. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. Jun Xiaoyao's battle achievements were too outstanding. Sometimes, the title of being invincible among the younger generation was too flattering. If it weren't for Jun Xiaoyao's strong background and no one dared to provoke him, he would have been plotted against many times. After all, there were many immortal forces who didn't want to see Jun Xiaoyao monopolize the glory of the entire world. Just as many big shots were talking, Jun Xiaoyao also punched. Golden qi and blood soared into the sky and turned into a dragon of qi and blood that poured into the sky. He also unleashed the bloodline potential of the sacred body of the ancients, and countless sacred runes began to appear on his body. At the same time, he clenched his 5 fingers and performed the fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation. The sacred runes on his body flowed and gathered energy. This was the manifestation of the sacred body of the ancients being fully activated. The sacred runes gathered on the tip of his fist and performed the fist of the 6 paths of reincarnation. In an instant, the void between heaven and earth was distorted. Thousands of rays of golden light flooded the universe. There was only a loud bang in the endless sacred light. A petite figure was sent flying backward with a whimper. Chapter 800. The blazing radiance illuminated the entire opportunity of fortune. The golden radiance surged like the ocean. Purple radiance surged and scattered in all directions. The collision of the 2 great constitutions destroyed the entire area beyond recognition. In the midst of such a violent collision, Long Yarrow-Er's body flew backward, and she let out a painful groan. Her fist had been smashed open, and drops of purple blood flowed out of it. I made Yarrow-Er bleed. Long Yarrow-Er stared at her pink fist in a daze, feeling that it was absurd. Ever since she was born, she had never suffered any injuries, let alone bleed. You took my first drop of blood, you bastard. Long Yarrow-Er scolded. Her watery purple eyes were spitting fire, and she was about to explode. She was like a little female dragon, unable to restrain her anger. Jun Xiaoyao raised his eyebrows. Although what she said was true, why did it sound a little strange? I thought this generation's overlord would pique my interest, the son of God. I didn't expect that she's just a naive brat. How disappointing. Jun Xiaoyao remained calm and shook his head faintly. I was just testing you. Next, I'll use my full strength. Long Yarrow-Er's pretty face was filled with anger, and she attacked again. Almost instantly, her fist returned to normal, without leaving a single mark on it. Seeing this, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with a dark light. The power of the heavenly tomes. Could it be? Jun Xiaoyao thought of one of the 9 heavenly tomes. However, he had no time to think about it now. Long Yarrow-Er had attacked again. She swung the overlord fist with one hand, and ancient dragon patterns appeared on the other hand. At the same time, dragon qi filled the air, transforming into a dragon and roaring at the sky. Great Void Dragon Fist. This was the ancient Void Dragon clan's divine fist technique, and its power shook the 9 heavens. If Long Yarrow-Er had used this fist technique from the beginning, the surrounding sky prides would have recognized her as a member of the ancient Void Dragon clan. At this moment, Long Yarrow-Er had the Overlord Fist in one hand and the Great Void Dragon Fist in the other. It could be said that she had reached the pinnacle of strength. Even the Ascendant King and Jiang Shengyi, who were both supreme outlawed sky prides, would be at a disadvantage if their physical bodies collided with Long Yarrow-Er's. Jun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, had no scruples at all. His divine abilities were unmatched, and his flesh was similarly unmatched. There wasn't a single aspect that he was lacking in, reaching the pinnacle in all aspects. Jun Xiaoyao activated his Deluo immortal body. The 206 Deluo immortal bones in his body glowed and resonated. A streak of immortal qi appeared and wrapped around the surface of Jun Xiaoyao's body, enhancing his physical strength. The sacred body of the ancients, the strength of 100,000 divine elephants, the immortal body of the great Luo immortal, and the divine qi of the physical body. At this moment, Zhun Xiaoyao's physical body could cause cracks to appear in the void even if he did not move. So what if you have a fleshly body and immortal qi? Long Yarrow harumphed disdainfully when she saw this. Her body shuddered as a purple blood-colored immortal qi appeared on the surface of her body. It was the purple-blooded immortal qi formed by the fusion of the blood of the ancient void dragon tribe and the blood of the tyrant body of the firmament. With the help of the purple blood-colored immortal qi, Long Yarrow's aura became even more powerful. The two of them collided like Mars crashing into Earth. The shockwave rippled violently like a tide, sweeping in all directions and flattening the surrounding mountains. The two of them engaged in a melee battle. Zhun Xiaoyao's blood qi surged to the heavens, and his holy light shocked the world. He was like an undefeatable divine king in the light, and with a single punch, he suppressed the entire world. On the other hand, although Long Yarrow looked adorable, she possessed a terrifying combat strength that did not match her appearance. Her small body contained the power to shatter the heavens. In just a few dozen breaths, the two of them had exchanged hundreds and thousands of blows. The sound waves shattered the void. You! Long Yarrow shouted angrily, and realized that she was being suppressed. Zhun Xiaoyao's combat ability was terrifyingly powerful. He could always catch the gaps in her moves and attack violently. In comparison, Long Yarrow had plenty of combat experience under Long Yuan's guidance. However, compared to Zhun Xiaoyao, who was a veteran who had experienced hundreds of battles, she was still lacking. Not to mention, Zhun Xiaoyao had fought with Ancient Chaos Great Emperor's inner demon before. Ancient Chaos Great Emperor had spent his entire life in battle, and his combat ability was top-notch among the Great Emperors. Zhun Xiaoyao had also absorbed more than half of Ancient Chaos Great Emperor's combat experience during his battle with Ancient Chaos Great Emperor. Comparing the two of them, Zhun Xiaoyao naturally crushed Long Yarrow in terms of combat skills. Bang! After another collision, Long Yarrow retreated, coughing out a small mouthful of blood. Her chest cracked, and her ribs seemed to have shattered. On the other hand, Zhun Xiaoyao was still in his white robe. Other than his arm being slightly numb, he did not have any other injuries. Bring out your true abilities, Zhun Xiaoyao said. The previous overlords were not that simple. Long Yarrow could fight with Zhun Xiaoyao for so long without using her trump card. It was enough to prove Long Yarrow's strength. Seems like you know your limits. You know that I, Yarrow have not used my true abilities. Long Yarrow snorted. Even in the middle of a battle, she did not forget to protect her face. Great Void Divine Mark. Long Yarrow used her ultimate move again. This was a great ability of the ancient Void Dragon race. In the void, a dragon-shaped divine mark appeared, as if it could cut through everything, and attacked Zhun Xiaoyao. Zhun Xiaoyao used his finger as a sword and used the immortal slaying sword art. A thick sword qi spread out like a mountain ridge, slashing through the sky. When the two collided, a dazzling brilliance burst out. Long Yarrow's cherry lips muttered, and she chanted an ancient scripture. That was the inheritance of the ancient Void Dragon race, the Great Void Immortal Scripture. A total of 9 ancient dragon race characters appeared, and each of them was like a star, releasing endless brilliance. The 9 ancient characters of the dragon race pressed down on Zhun Xiaoyao like 9 stars falling from the sky. The ancient Void Dragon race's immortal scripture. Zhun Xiaoyao muttered. He dealt with it calmly, using his finger as a sword, and slashed across the void. A cross-shaped crack appeared, and then expanded. It was the chaotic sky secret technique, cross-shaped starfield intersection. The gigantic cross-shaped spatial rift was like a chain of stars, forming a mighty cross-shaped Milky Way. And Long Yarrow extracted 9 ancient characters from the Great Void Immortal Scripture, and suppressed it, colliding with the cross-shaped crack. Immortal Scripture, it's the ancient Void Dragon race's immortal scripture. The son of God of the Zhun family is using the forbidden technique of the ancient Chaos the Arch. The surrounding geniuses exclaimed. One of them had used an ancient scripture, while the other had used a forbidden technique. Both of them were extremely powerful. As expected of the Overlord Constitution and the Sacred Constitution. They were at odds with each other, and neither wanted to give in. Rumble. Heaven and earth lost their color, and the sun and moon lost their light. It was as if a galaxy was boiling and then exploding, and the aftershock injured many geniuses. In such a shock, Long Yarrow was forced back again, coughing up blood, and some of her bones were broken. Jun Xiaoyaro was also forced back 100 steps, and his body was shaking. The Overlord is injured. The son of God of the Jun family is also forced back. In all directions, all the geniuses sucked in a breath of cold air. This battle could be said to be a tit for tat, and neither side was giving in. However, looking at the current situation, although Jun Xiaoyaro was also forced back, and his body was shaking, he was obviously better than Long Yarrow. Sacred Body of the Ancients, Book 83964. Chapter 801. Jun Xiaoyaro stood in the air. Although he was knocked back, he was still calm. Long Yarrow, on the other hand, had a trace of purple blood at the corner of her mouth. The difference between the two was obvious. No way. Could it be that even the Overlord can't deal with the Son of God of the Jun family? That's not right. Even a supreme saint can't be unaffected by the terrifying power of the collision just now, right? That's ridiculous. The surrounding geniuses were dumbfounded. In the past, the battle of the holy body and the tyrant body had always involved punches to the flesh and blood. It was as if he was risking his life. But now, even in the face of the rare Overlord, Jun Xiaoyaro was still untainted. His appearance was extremely calm and composed. It didn't look like he was facing a mortal enemy at all. On the other hand, although Long Yarrow's injuries weren't particularly serious, compared to Jun Xiaoyaro, she was a little embarrassed. Damn it, you monster. There was deep fear in the depths of Long Yarrow's purple eyes. She thought that she was already a monster. But now, an even more abnormal monster had appeared. However, Long Yarrow was calm. Her small and delicate body began to glow, and a purple light shone. It was as if there was a god chanting in her body, blessing her and restoring her vitality. Some of the injuries on her body, such as broken bones, were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, most of her injuries were healed. This scene stunned and puzzled the surrounding geniuses. Is the recovery ability of the ancient void dragon race so strong? Even with the Overlord body of the heavens, this recovery ability is too abnormal. She's practically invincible. Many people exclaimed, and their eyes were shining. They all wanted to find out Long Yarrow's background. A hint of smugness flashed in the depths of Long Yarrow's purple eyes. This was one of her trump cards. With this trump card, she was almost invincible. Even if she was seriously injured, she could recover. She wouldn't be easily killed. Jun Xiaoyao, are you desperate? If you surrender now and become my punching bag and boy toy, you can suffer less. Long Yarrow raised her small face and said smugly. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm and collected, without any surprise or anger. Because he had already seen through Long Yarrow's trump card. This made Jun Xiaoyaro somewhat happy. Because Long Yarrow's things were his things. This abominable brat, he even dares to say that he wants Big Brother Xiaoyaro to be his boy toy. Jiang Luoli's charming eyes were filled with anger and disdain. Believe in Xiaoyaro, he never disappoints. Jiang Shengyi smiled, not worried at all. Although Jun Xiaoyao's opponent was the tyrant, a prodigy of the ancient void dragon tribe, she had absolute confidence in Jun Xiaoyao. When Jiang Luoli heard this, a sly smile suddenly appeared on her face. She rolled her eyes and said, Sister Shengyi, watch the show. Brother Xiaoyaro will definitely give that brat a surprise. Surprise? Jiang Shengyi was puzzled. Did Jun Xiaoyaro obtain some kind of fortuitous opportunity again? Jiang Luoli smiled mysteriously and did not say much. Back to the battle. Long Yarrow's bare feet stomped on the void, causing the sky to tremble. She turned into a stream of light and charged toward Jun Xiaoyaro again. On the surface of his body, the phantom of a large bell appeared as if it was the strongest defense, blocking everything. The Great Bell Dao Physique of the 9 Great Divine Forms. It's the 9 Great Divine Forms, the ultimate move of the Tyrant Constitution, a prodigy exclaimed. Long Yarrow finally used the ultimate move of the Tyrant Constitution. When the 9 great divine forms appeared at the same time, it was said that they could annihilate everything in the world. At this moment, Long Yarrow attacked with the great bell Dao Physique, and the bell waves shattered the sky. When Jun Xiaoyaro saw this, he stomped his feet as well, and the phantom of the myriad Dao sage appeared around him. Sage Physique, reverence of 10,000 sages, a terrifying aura swept out, weakening Long Yarrow's strength. Bam! The two of them collided again. This time, it was even more violent and fierce. Jun Xiaoyaro slapped the phantom of the large bell on the surface of Long Yarrow's body, and a loud clang was heard. Long Yarrow was pushed back, but she attacked again and used the Kuan Peng divine form. An illusory Kuan Peng appeared, and it was extremely huge, filling the void. Kuan Peng divine form, you're just showing off in front of an expert. Jun Xiaoyaro sneered. He used the Kuan Peng divine power again and waved his hand. The huge Kuan Peng appeared, and with a swing of its tail, tens of thousands of runes splashed out and shattered the void. In front of the true Kuan Peng divine power, the Kuan Peng divine form of the tyrant constitution was just SOSO. Long Yarrow gritted her sparkling canine teeth. She was unwilling to give up and continued to display her tyrant body. A true dragon appeared, and the dragon's roar shattered the sky. Then, an immortal phoenix appeared, and its wings were like heavenly blades, cutting the sky and slashing horizontally. It was the true dragon Dharma body and the immortal phoenix feather. Seeing this, Jun Xiaoyaro used the Kuan Peng technique in one hand and the Lightning Emperor technique in the other. Behind him, immortal light surged, and holy light shone brightly. A majestic immortal shadow appeared. It was the sacred physique phenomenon, Immortal King descending to the 9 heavens. Immortal King descending to the 9 heavens was supported by divine powers. The Kuan Peng technique and Lightning Emperor technique that Jun Xiaoyaro used were even more ferocious. It was as if the void in this area was about to boil and burn. The violent collision resounded through the sky, and dharmic powers surged wildly, drowning everything. I don't believe that I can't subdue you. Long Yarrow gritted her teeth and used her divine form again. Long Yarrow used the Pishio divine form, Swanee divine form, and so on. In the end, the 9 divine forms were all used and revolved around Long Yarrow. It was as if they had the power to destroy the heavens. She actually cultivated the complete 9 divine forms. At this moment, Long Yarrow caused everyone to tremble. The most famous tyrant constitution were naturally the 9 divine forms. This was the ultimate forbidden technique of the tyrant constitution. A single divine form was a great killing weapon that was invincible. As for the combination of the 9 divine forms, it was even more invincible. It could kill all opponents of the tyrant constitution, and it was known as the invincible technique. However, whether it was the incomplete ancient tyrant constitution Chu Tianba that Jun Xiaoyaro encountered, or the tyrant constitution Xiong Fei, neither of them had cultivated the complete 9 divine forms. But now, Long Yarrow had used the complete 9 divine forms. This was enough to make one shudder. With these 9 divine forms, Long Yarrow could dominate the ancient road, and even the supreme outlawed Skyprides would be wary of her. At this moment, the 9 divine forms appeared at the same time, and the world was filled with all kinds of purple divine light. All kinds of mystical scenes appeared. The ancient universe, the rotation of the sun and the moon, and the transformation of all living things. The scene was so terrifying that it was as if the universe was about to be split open. Long Yarrow's petite Linglong's jade body released a peerless domineering aura. At this moment, no one dared to look down on her cute appearance. She was simply a peerless overlord in a cute lowly skin. 9 divine forms, slay the heavens and decimate the earth. Long Yarrow's delicate shout was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in the sky. The entire buried Emperor star trembled and began to change. Faint patterns of the laws appeared on the surface of the star. Those were the buried Emperor star's laws. They had appeared because of Long Yarrow's 9 divine forms. This caused all the Skyprides to suck in a breath of cold air. To be able to trigger the buried Emperor star's laws meant that this move was extremely powerful. It had even surpassed the limit of a level 9 sage. In other words, anyone below the quasi-supreme level would be in danger. Even sacred lord powerhouses could not be ignored. The 9 divine forms rotated in the void and surrounded Jun Xiaoyao, wanting to melt the world and turn it into nothingness. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a hint of seriousness. This move could definitely kill a supreme sage. Chapter 802. Jun Xiaoyao had always been calm and composed when dealing with his opponents. However, that didn't mean that he would underestimate his opponents. Now that Long Yaro's 9 godly forms had appeared, it was a killing move. Jun Xiaoyao naturally wouldn't hold back. The chaotic aura around him spread out like a tide. Green lotuses bloomed from it. Then, a yin-yang taiji diagram appeared above his head. As it rotated, it was like a black and white sky was pressing down. Chaotic green lotus. Yin-yang diagram of life and death. In addition to the 10,000 saints pilgrimage and immortal king ascension from before. The 4 sacred physique avatars appeared together. He already has 4 avatars. Unfortunately, it's rumored that there are 6 avatars in total. There are still 2 that have yet to be cultivated. That's right. It's rumored that when the 6 avatars of the sacred physique are completely formed, it's like the 6 paths of reincarnation. It can defeat all enemies. That's right. If the Jun family's son of God had cultivated 6 avatars, he definitely wouldn't be weaker than the 9 godly forms. Unfortunately, many elites shook their heads and sighed, feeling sorry for Jun Xiaoyao. With his invincible posture and the 6 avatars of the sacred physique, it shouldn't be too much of a problem to deal with Long Yaro's 9 godly forms. There was even a certain chance of winning. However, Jun Xiaoyao only had 4 avatars now. Against Long Yaro's complete 9 godly forms, he would undoubtedly be at a great disadvantage. It would be very dangerous. As expected, when the 2 avatars collided, the 9 godly forms joined together and formed a whole. Their power multiplied and completely suppressed the 4 sacred physique avatars. Although the 4 sacred physique avatars were extremely powerful, they weren't complete. They didn't form a complete fusion of the 6 avatars. The Jun family's son of God is in danger now. Many elites stared at the battle intently. Those female cultivators were so nervous that their breathing seemed to have stopped. Was the legend of the peerless white-robed invincible going to come to an end with the Overlord? The 9 godly forms rotated in the void as if they had formed a universe of their own. They surrounded Jun Xiaoyao and began to refine him. That void directly shattered and was annihilated by the power of the 9 godly forms, turning into a vacuum. From this, it could be seen how terrifying its power was. Jun Xiaoyao, who was trapped inside, started to tremble and cough up blood. Cracks started to appear on the surface of his body. What? Seeing this scene, everyone was stunned. The son of God of the Jun family, who was known to be invincible among the younger generation, was injured and coughing up blood. This was simply unbelievable. If news of this got out, it would cause a huge commotion. After all, ever since Jun Xiaoyao was born, he had swept through the younger generation and had never been defeated. He was a legendary and invincible figure. It was to the extent where he could even walk his own path, known as an ancient anomaly, making immortal domains' wills feel restraining fear, fighting against the heavens. Besides, there had never been a genius who could injure Jun Xiaoyao to the point of coughing up blood. At this moment, such a peerless figure's body was actually trembling, and a bit of blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. This caused everyone to feel incredulous. How could that be? The Ascendant Feather King's eyes were deep as he frowned. Beside him, Yu Yunchang's face was ghastly pale as her heart clenched. She could not help but grab the Ascendant Feather King's sleeves and said, "Brother, why don't you go and help young Master Jun? Don't be anxious. No matter how bad Brother Jun is, he won't die directly, right?" The Ascendant Feather King shook his head slightly. Among the younger generation, there was almost no one who could kill Jun Xiaoyao. Even the Tyrant Dragon King, Yaro did not have the ability to kill Jun Xiaoyao directly. The Ascendant Feather King felt that something was amiss. Could it be that Brother Jun is still hiding his strength? The Ascendant Feather King muttered to himself. On the other side, Princess Longji's heart was also in her mouth. She was extremely nervous and worried for Jun Xiaoyao. After all, Jun Xiaoyao came to save her. If something really happened to him. No. No, he's not that kind of person. Princess Longji thought of that white-robed figure who always looked calm and indifferent to everything. He was so confident, so calm, and so sure that victory was in his hands. There was no one or anything that could make him fearful or fearful. Even in the earliest days when Princess Longji had the ability to compete with Jun Xiaoyao. She also felt that she was completely played by Jun Xiaoyao. Such a scheming, unfathomable, and powerful monstrous figure. How could he be defeated by a violent little lowly like Long Yaro? That would be a little comical. Ha, Jun Xiaoyao, you will definitely lose this time. Let me end your invincible legend. Long Yaro's purple eyes shone brightly as she channeled her strength to the maximum. Her dharmic powers surged and strengthened the 9 godly forms. The ancient golden dragon bloodline and the heavenly tyrant blood were completely activated. Radiance surged and filled the world. The power of the 9 godly forms was even stronger as they completely destroyed the space where Jun Xiaoyao was. Jun Xiaoyao's body released a divine glow as he wanted to defend against the power of the 9 godly forms. However, the cracks on the surface of his body increased and fresh blood flowed out. All the surrounding sky prides watched intently. This was the first time they had seen Jun Xiaoyao injured. Jun Xiaoyao, it's over. Long Yaro stomped her foot and charged towards Jun Xiaoyao as the invincible tyrant fist swept out. Jun Xiaoyao was already suppressed by the 9 godly forms. At this moment, he struck out with his palm and collided with Long Yaro's. His body retreated, and his body seemed to show signs of disintegration. This scene was not only seen by the surrounding people. It was also noticed by many big shots who were watching the battle in the depths of the universe. Is it going to end? The invincible legend of the sacred body ends here. No, the son of God of the Jun family shouldn't be like this. He still has a trump card that he hasn't used yet. Some of the big shots were secretly communicating. Those who were hostile to Jun Xiaoyao were very happy to see this scene. In the universe, Long Yaro's protector, Long Yuan, also had a hint of joy on his old face when he saw this scene. The Overlord Ancestral Hall and the ancient Void Dragon clan did not raise you in vain. Yaro, you did not disappoint us. Long Yuan's old face revealed a gratified expression. He was still a little nervous before, afraid that Long Yaro would be defeated by Jun Xiaoyao. Not only would she lose the name of the Overlord body, but she would also make her invincible Dao heart unstable. Now, it seemed that he had thought too much. In the current situation, many people thought that Jun Xiaoyao was in trouble. Unless he used his true trump card, it would be difficult for him to turn the tables. Jun Xiaoyao, I'll give you a chance. Take the initiative to be a good boy toy, and Yaro won't let you be in such a sorry state. Long Yaro giggled. She was in a very good mood now. That's not necessary. Jun Xiaoyao smiled faintly. Even though there was blood flowing from the corner of his mouth and the surface of his body was cracked like porcelain, his expression was still calm and composed. Sigh, then there's no other way? Long Yaro shook her head slightly with a look of pity. She rushed forward again, and the 9 godly forms erupted with unprecedented brilliance. It was as if a small universe was being smelted and boiled. Jun Xiaoyao, who was in the middle of it, exploded with a bang. All kinds of runes scattered, and the Dao laws were broken. How is this possible? Countless exclamations sounded from all directions. Jiang Xingyi's heart twitched subconsciously. Even Long Yaro's purple crystal eyes widened for a moment, and her brain couldn't react. Although the 9 godly forms were terrifying, Jun Xiaoyao wouldn't die directly, right? There was complete silence. A deathly silence. Amidst this deathly silence, an indifferent and gentle voice suddenly sounded. It seems that I, the Son of God, have underestimated you. A single Dharma body is not enough to suppress you. As the voice fell, in the depths of the sky, a spatial crack was suddenly torn open. Then, in the endless golden holy light, a peerless and otherworldly figure in white stepped out from it. He was like a god. It was none other than Jun Xiaoyao. At this moment, all the prodigies were stunned. They were dumbfounded and their eyeballs almost popped out. Some of the big shots in the depths of the universe were also stunned. It was a little comical and exciting. Chapter 803. The world was dead silent. It was as if all sound had been sucked away. The entire place was silent. Looking at the white-robed figure stepping out of the spatial rift, everyone felt as if they were dreaming. Everyone felt like they were dreaming. Their minds were blank, and they were completely dumbfounded. Why are there two Jun Xiaoyaro? Are you out of your mind? It's obvious that the one fighting the Overlord is a Dharma body. In other words, the Overlord has been fighting with the Dharma body of the Jun family's Son of God. A prodigy's voice was dry as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That should be the case. Don't forget, the Jun family's Son of God also used his Dharma body to cause a ruckus at Gu Tiez's wedding banquet. Only then did everyone remember. It was not the first time Jun Xiaoyaro had done that. His Dharma body had caused a ruckus at Gu Tiez's wedding banquet and fought against 4 successors of the Xian Ting. In the end, he even kidnapped the bride, Fairy Yuan. It could be said to have caused a sensation. It also made Gu Tiezi lose all his face, and many people still treated him as a joke. And now, Jun Xiaoyaro was using the same trick again. Most people would never have thought that Jun Xiaoyaro would use his Dharma body to fight with the Overlord. This was no longer contempt. Instead, it was blatant contempt. In the past eras, the battle between the sacred body and the Overlord body had always been a life-and-death battle. The number of times the sacred body won was even less than the Overlord body. But now, they had been fighting for half a day. Long Yarrow had been fighting with Jun Xiaoyao's Dharma body the whole time. It was a lonely fight. On the other hand, Jun Xiaoyao's original body had been hiding in the depths of the void, watching the show like a spectator. It was not very harmful, but it was extremely insulting. And it was not only Long Yarrow who was insulted. Outside the buried Emperor Star, deep in the universe, Long Yuan was also dumbfounded. His old face was burning as if he had been slapped 100 times. His face was about to be swollen. As a Grand Empyrean, it had been a long time since he had experienced such humiliation. Previously, he had been overjoyed and thought that he had groomed an invincible genius who could suppress Jun Xiaoyaro. And now, Long Yuan could even feel it. Some of the big shots hiding in the dark looked at him with mocking eyes. This was a huge loss of face. Moreover, it wasn't just him and the ancient Void Dragon tribe who had lost face, but also the tyrant body lineage. After all, Long Yarrow was a dignified overlord. How could she fight Jun Xiaoyao's Dharmakaya for such a long time? Long Yuan had a feeling that the people of Overlord Ancestral Hall would not be in a good mood when they saw this scene. Over at the Emperor-level Fortuitous Opportunity Land, all the Sky Prides were still in a state of stiff expression. Jiang Xingyi let out a long sigh of relief, then looked at Jiang Luoli and said, "Luo Li, is this the surprise you were talking about?" "Of course. How is it, Big Brother Xiaoyao's surprise?" Jiang Luoli smiled until her eyes turned into crescents. She admired Jun Xiaoyaro more and more. He could even think of such a trick. It must have caused tons of damage to Long Yarrow-er's young heart. Many Sky Prides also turned to look at Long Yarrow-er. To be honest, anyone who encountered such a situation would have a mental breakdown. Sure enough, Long Yarrow-er clenched her fists tightly. Her young shoulders were trembling slightly as if she was trying her best to hold back her tears. The Sky Prides were stunned to see that there was a little mist in Long Yarrow-er's purple eyes. "She's crying from anger?" One of the Sky Prides was stunned. The dignified overlord was crying from anger. This was a little funny. If this spread out, it would definitely be a legend for eternity that would continue to be passed down. Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao, you. Long Yarrow gritted her teeth, and tears were about to flow out of her eyes. Only now did she understand how sinister this world was. How sinister the human heart was. Her naive and pure heart had suffered a ton of damage. Especially previously, when Long Yarrow heard about Gu Tiezi, she had even mocked him for being a piece of trash who couldn't even deal with Jun Xiaoyao's avatar. But now, the clown was actually herself. Long Yarrow really wanted to cry. This world was too cruel. If it weren't for the fact that there were so many people around, Long Yarrow would definitely cry. But now, there was more anger in her heart. Anger towards Jun Xiaoyaro. You're crying now? Then I'm sorry, it's not time for you to really cry. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. He raised his hand and snapped his fingers. He spat out lightly. Fourth seal of the immortal prohibition seal, condense. In an instant, the scattered runes and Daoist laws at the place where Jun Xiaoyao's avatar had exploded instantly gathered. It transformed into a powerful space-freezing force. It was the fourth seal of the immortal prohibition seal. Jun Xiaoyaro had hidden the power of the fourth seal of the immortal prohibition seal in his avatar. Long Yarrow didn't expect Jun Xiaoyaro to hide this move at all. Caught off guard, she was directly frozen in space, like an insect frozen in amber. Although this kind of restraint could be broken through very quickly for Long Yarrow. But now, they were in the middle of a great battle. Every second counted. Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a cold smile as he directly attacked. The moment he attacked, he used his ultimate move, the Heavenly Death Wheel. Jun Xiaoyao's hands seemed to be spinning the wheel of life and death, and his power was extremely strong. Although Long Yarrow couldn't move, the 9 avatars she summoned automatically protected her master, turning into a chaotic universe with purple light. Jun Xiaoyaro summoned his 4 sacred physique avatars, suppressing the world. At the same time, the Heavenly Death Wheel blasted out. One had to know that this wasn't Jun Xiaoyao's avatar attacking. It was his true body attacking. The power was simply incomparable. The 4 sacred physique avatars surged with power and blocked the 9 avatars. Then, the Heavenly Death Wheel directly bombarded Long Yarrow's body. Poochie. That space was completely destroyed. Long Yarrow's delicate body retreated rapidly, vomiting large mouthfuls of blood, and her small face was extremely pale. Her delicate body was about to shatter, and cracks appeared on the surface of her body. She had taken a full blow from Jun Xiaoyaro. Even with the heavenly tyrant body and the ancient void dragon bloodline, she couldn't withstand it and was instantly severely injured. Of course, the 4th seal of the immortal prohibition seal was also broken. There was no trace of pity in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. Long Yarrow's appearance was deceiving, but she was after all his old enemy, the Overlord. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally wouldn't hold back. He used his ultimate move and attacked consecutively. Long Yarrow was severely injured and could only barely resist. However, in her body, there seemed to be the chanting of gods, causing her injuries to quickly recover. Even so, she was still absolutely suppressed by Jun Xiaoyaro. Looking at the scene in front of them, all the surrounding geniuses were shocked by Jun Xiaoyao's methods. First, he used his avatar to fight Long Yarrow to gauge her strength and force her to use her 9 avatars. Then, he hid the 4th seal of the immortal prohibition seal in his avatar and schemed against Long Yarrow then suppressed her. It could be said that every step was calculated to win. F***ck, not only is the Jun family's son of God powerful, but his mind is also like a ghost. I can't compare to him. Yeah, in front of the Jun family's son of God, I feel that Long Yarrow isn't even a fool. She's just a retard. Everyone present felt that way. In terms of scheming, Long Yarrow was simply crushed by Jun Xiaoyaro in all aspects. She was just like a landlord's silly daughter. The Overlord clan has lost a lot of face this time. Everyone looked at each other. This battle between the Sacred Physique and the Overlord Physique was enough to be recorded in history. However, it was a little special and would probably be passed down for thousands of years and become a classic that everyone praised. Chapter 804. In the current battle, Long Yarrow was at an absolute disadvantage and had suffered heavy injuries. Thinking about it, Jun Xiaoyao's avatar was able to fight with Long Yarrow for so long. Now that his main body had made a move, his strength was simply not on the same level. It was an unimaginable comparison. It was like a person who had painstakingly defeated the final boss. Just as he was feeling complacent, he suddenly realized that the boss had a second stage, and it was even stronger. Anyone would feel despair if they were in his shoes. Is this his true strength? Long Yarrow's snow-white chin was dripping with blood. She was completely suppressed. Only now did she realize how narrow-minded she was. A frog in a well couldn't talk about the sea, and a summer insect couldn't talk about the ice. She and Jun Xiaoyaro were simply not on the same level. Apart from her brute force and strength, Long Yarrow was a naive and violent lowly. Even if she had a special trump card that could allow her physical injuries to heal quickly, it was impossible for her to withstand such a powerful attack. The Overlord's mentality is crumbling. Some geniuses shook their heads when they saw Long Yarrow's angry and anxious face. Killing people wasn't scary. What was scary was killing the heart. Jun Xiaoyaro toyed with Long Yarrow like a sly old fox toying with a little girl. He could do anything he wanted to her. It's time to end it. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent. To tell the truth, among the enemies Jun Xiaoyaro was facing, Long Yarrow's strength was indeed one of the best. After all, being able to destroy his avatar was enough to prove Long Yarrow's ability. Although this was a kind of insult to Long Yarrow. Unfortunately, Long Yarrow's intelligence was not enough. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and punched out with the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, preparing to end the battle. No, I, Long Yarrow, am an invincible overlord. How can I be defeated? Long Yarrow shouted loudly. On her snow-white and delicate neck, there was a collar with a purple gold bell hanging from it. The purple gold bell fell and with a loud bang, it turned into a purple gold bell that wrapped around Long Yarrow's heavily injured body. This purple gold bell circulated with a hazy purple light, and a domineering emperor's aura spread out. The entire buried Emperor Star's law runes appeared once again. That's the Overlord bell. The surrounding people could not help but exclaim when they saw this scene. So the thing hanging on Long Yarrow's neck was not a bell, but a bell. This bell was called the Domineering Bell. It was the inherited monarch weapon of the tyrant body, just like the desolate god armor of the desolate ancient temple. No, that's not right. Although it has emperor's might, it's not a real emperor weapon. Could it be an emperor weapons brand? Many sky prides came to their senses. Although the bell was filled with emperor's might, it was still far from being a true monarch weapon. Adding on the buried Emperor Star's laws, it was impossible for a true emperor armament to unleash its full power. In other words, the Tyrant Bell was only a brand of the Imperial Armament Tyrant Bell. However, even if it was just a mark, it was still strong enough. Jun Xiaoyao's 6 paths of reincarnation fist landed on the bell, causing it to let out a clang, but it didn't break through. Imprint of an Imperial armament. Jun Xiaoyaro smirked contemptuously. Who didn't have such a thing? Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand, and a rune landed on his palm. Immediately, light burst out. The Emperor's might was vast, and finally, it turned into a battle axe filled with a desolate aura, as if it could split heaven and earth apart. Imprint of the ancient Chaos Axe. It's the ancient Chaos Axe. It was no longer a secret that Jun Xiaoyaro had obtained the ancient Chaos Emperor's inheritance. It wasn't the first time Jun Xiaoyaro had used the ancient Chaos Axe's imprint. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro activated the power of the 108 Sumeru worlds in his body. Surging divine power and magic power were added to the ancient Chaos Axe. The axe chopped down, heaven and earth collapsed, and the universe shattered. This terrifying power also caused the buried Emperor Star's law runes to flicker. This was a power that even a 9th stage saint would find difficult to resist. Boom! A loud explosion that seemed to split heaven and earth erupted. The purple gold Tyrant Bell's imprint was directly cracked by the ancient Chaos Axe's imprint, and then it exploded. Long Yarrow, who was inside, was also severely injured. Her face was as pale as paper, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. It wasn't that the Tyrant Bell's imprint was inferior to the ancient Chaos Axe's imprint. It was just that Long Yarrow was severely injured and couldn't support the Tyrant Bell at all. Jun Xiaoyaro hadn't been injured at all, and he had been in peak condition all this time. As such, it was only natural that Jun Xiaoyaro was able to break through the barrier with a single swing of his axe. Jun Xiaoyaro used his fingers as a sword again, and the 9-leaf sword grass swayed in the void around him. As the leaves shook, a terrifying sword chi exploded, cutting through the sun, moon, and stars. Poochie. Blood splattered everywhere. Long Yarrow's tender arms and legs were cut off. Purple gold blood splattered everywhere. Jun Xiaoyaro flashed forward again. Slap. A slap landed on Long Yarrow's blood-stained face. Don't be so childish at such a young age, thinking of being a king every day. Jun Xiaoyaro sneered. The childish correction palm was prepared for a childish girl like Long Yarrow. Long Yarrow was stunned, and her mind was dizzy. Her entire world-view was about to collapse. In the end, Jun Xiaoyaro stomped Long Yarrow heavily on the ground. At this moment, Long Yarrow had been turned into a human stick, and she was incomparably miserable. All the prodigies felt a chill down their spines when they saw this scene. Jun Xiaoyaro was truly capable of doing such a thing. If it were anyone else, looking at Long Yarrow's delicate little face, they might have hesitated for a moment. It could only be said that Jun Xiaoyaro was a ruthless person. However, what shocked everyone even more was that there was a dense light at the place where Long Yarrow's limbs were cut off, and new limbs were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. How is this possible? Everyone was dumbfounded. Although saint-level experts already had the ability to regrow severed limbs. However, it would still take a period of recuperation for it to grow back. It was absolutely impossible to be like Long Yarrow, whose limbs immediately began to grow back after being cut off. Even if it's the tyrant body and the ancient void dragon bloodline, the recovery ability can't be strong to this extent, right? All the prodigies felt incredulous. A deep look appeared in Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. He had indeed deliberately cut off Long Yarrow's limbs. Now, he could be sure. Long Yarrow definitely had that heavenly book. This was also the reason why Jun Xiaoyaro did not immediately kill Long Yarrow. Because he needed to get that heavenly book from Long Yarrow. If he could obtain this heavenly book, Jun Xiaoyaro would truly be in an invincible position, and no one would be able to destroy him. How is this possible? Yarrow is an invincible overlord. How is this possible? At this moment, although Long Yarrow's limbs were rapidly growing, and her internal injuries were also trying their best to recover. However, she had already exhausted too much and was unable to fight anymore. Long Yarrow's purple crystal-like pupils were filled with mist. She really wanted to cry. It seems that it's impossible to make this son of God a pet boy. However, this overlord of yours is quite suitable to be a little bitch. After all, you still wear a collar. The corner of Jun Xiaoyao's mouth curled into a sneer. He casually raised his hand, and the divine chains of order condensed into a dog leash. The other end was connected to the collar on Long Yarrow's neck. Seeing this, all the geniuses were dumbfounded. Did the overlord really become a dog? This was King awesome. This extreme humiliation made Long Yarrow clench her small canine teeth tightly. Her pink face flushed red, and there were tears of humiliation in the corners of her eyes. Even her sparkling and translucent ears were completely red. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro was like a sadistic, black-bellied, and cold Prince Charming. Why do I feel that the Jun family's son of God is a bit perverted? But he's also handsome and cold when he's perverted. I also want to be led by the cold son of God with a dog leash. A female cultivator blushed and said excitedly. The surrounding people, something's wrong with you. Right at this moment, an aged voice that carried a hint of anger suddenly exploded from the sky. Enough, Jun family's son of God, isn't this a bit too much? An old figure with a vast and mighty aura descended from the sky above the buried emperor star. It was Long Yarrow's guardian, the grand heavenly venerable expert, Long Yuan. Chapter 805. Long Yuan saw the entire battle with his eyes. From the initial joy, to the final disappointment, embarrassment, and anger, he felt. Long Yuan's mood was like a roller coaster. As a great heavenly venerate, Long Yuan hadn't experienced such ups and downs in a long time. Originally, at his level, his state of mind was very calm and there wouldn't be any waves. But today, Jun Xiaoyao's actions had infuriated him. Looking at the miserable Long Yarrow under Jun Xiaoyao's foot, Long Yuan's old face twitched. If he didn't know that the heavenly book Long Yarrow controlled had an extremely strong recovery ability, he wouldn't have been able to resist. He might not be able to hold himself back from attacking Jun Xiaoyao. What a terrifying aura. It's a superior supremacy. It's the ancient Void Dragon clan's supreme elder Long Yuan, a great heavenly venerate. It wasn't just the people in the Emperor Grade Opportunity Land. Many geniuses in the other realms of the buried Emperor Star raised their heads and saw the terrifying figure. A great heavenly venerate was already someone who stood at the peak. In addition, he had the unique bloodline talent of the ancient Void Dragon clan. Long Yuan's strength was even stronger than an ordinary great heavenly venerate. I didn't expect that even such a powerhouse would appear. It seems that the Jun family's son of God can't touch the Overlord. That's not necessarily true. You know the Jun family's son of God's temper. He doesn't even care about the heavens, let alone a great heavenly venerate. All the geniuses' gazes fell on Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro had defeated Long Yaro with absolute strength. But it wouldn't be that easy for him to kill Long Yaro. Everyone was curious. How would Jun Xiaoyaro deal with it? Great heavenly venerate! Jun Xiaoyaro muttered to himself. He raised his head and looked indifferently at Long Yuan. Long Yuan frowned and said coldly, Jun Xiaoyaro, as the dignified son of God of the Jun family, such humiliating means are beneath your status. Oh, I don't know where this son of God has been. Long Yaro kept saying that she wanted to suppress this son of God and make him her boy toy. If that's the case, then what's wrong with this son of God suppressing her as a mother pet? Jun Xiaoyao's words made Long Yuan's old face twitch, and he was speechless. Everyone around them also sighed in amazement. As expected of Jun Xiaoyaro, there was nothing wrong with his word. Furthermore, everyone noticed that Jun Xiaoyaro still referred to himself as the son of God and not as a junior. In other words, Jun Xiaoyaro was treating Long Yuan as an equal and wasn't being humble just because Long Yuan was a great Empyrean. Then what do you want? Do you really dare to kill Yaro? Long Yuan's tone turned cold. The faint smile on Jun Xiaoyao's face also disappeared. His gaze was cold. Suddenly, he used his finger as a sword and activated the grass symbol sword technique. As the sword light flashed, a slashing sound rang out. Long Yaro's newly grown limbs were chopped off again. Ah, pain. Pain. Long Yaro's small face was deathly pale. Although she had extremely strong recovery abilities, it was clearly impossible for her to be immune to pain. Next time, the sword energy might land on her neck. This son of God wants to see if she's going to grow another head. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was cold. There were hissing sounds of cold air being sucked in from the surroundings. Jun Xiaoyao's methods were too sharp and ruthless. The head was connected to the origin spirit in the brain. If it was severed, it would be very troublesome and wouldn't recover as quickly as the limbs. Even if Long Yaro controlled the heavenly book, it wouldn't do. It would have a great impact. Ah, don't, please don't. At the thought of her headless appearance, Long Yaro really wanted to cry from fright. You impudent. Long Yuan's eyes were about to split open, his lungs about to explode. He had always been Long Yaro's Dao protector. In his heart, Long Yaro was like his own granddaughter. Who wouldn't be angry when they saw their own granddaughter being treated so cruelly? You also know how to be angry. Back then, when Overlord Body Xiong Fei used the blood of curses to plot against me, I was also very unhappy. Jun Xiaoyaro sneered. What plot? I don't even know. Long Yaro said, feeling wronged. It was clearly her sandbag that was killed by Jun Xiaoyaro. How did it become Xiong Fei's plot against him? Looks like you don't know. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Long Yaro. For a fool like Long Yaro, she probably wouldn't have thought of such a move. Then it should be the plot of the Overlord Body Ancestral Hall. Damn it. Long Yuan couldn't watch any longer and raised his hand. The aura of a grand heavenly venerable erupted, causing the stars in the sky to tremble and begin to fall. A dragon claw made of magic power pressed down like the sky. It was incomparably majestic and collapsed in all directions. Of course, Long Yuan's move wasn't to kill Jun Xiaoyao. It was to snatch Long Yaro back. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was indifferent. One of his feet was still stepping on Long Yaro's body. Not to mention other things, just the runes of the buried Emperor Star were enough to weaken the power of the dragon claw by more than half. Therefore, Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't worried. However, at this moment, in the depths of the stars in the distance, a zither sound blade suddenly swept over, shattering many stars along the way. The zither-sound blade landed on the dragon claw and directly cut it in half. Intense magic power ripples were set off in the universe's sky. Long Yuan frowned. Jun Xiaoyaro was also surprised for a moment. Then, a hint of gentleness and nostalgia appeared in his eyes. A peerless woman in grey holding a zither in her arms came over like a fairy. Her grey robe was wide, and her sleeves fluttered in the wind, but it couldn't hide her proud figure. Her long black hair was long and messy, covering more than half of her face. Half of her face was exposed, and it was as fair as snow. It was breathtaking and beautiful like a dream. Although the eyes of the grey-clothed woman were covered by her black hair, they were still visible. It was as if the sun was destroyed and the stars were sinking, reenacting the terrifying scene of chaos. It was Jun Xiaoyao's guardian, the woman with double pupils, Arju. Arju, it's really you. Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a gentle smile. Arju also turned around, and a faint smile appeared on her usually cold face. A smile that could topple the world. Young master, it's been a long time. Arju would only show such a smile in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. Because Jun Xiaoyaro was the person she had been protecting all her life. After Jun Xiaoyaro stepped on the Emperor Road and the Ancient Ultimate Road, Arju couldn't interfere too much due to the rules of the Ancient Road. Therefore, she could only cultivate on her own for the time being. Now that Jun Xiaoyaro was about to reach the end of the Ancient Ultimate Road, Arju rushed over again. That seems to be the guardian of the Son of God of the Jun family. She's so beautiful. She's the white-clothed supreme being of the Jun family. She's one of the 8 supreme beings under Jun Wuhui's command. She's born with double pupils. TSK, to have such a peerless beauty as his guardian, and she's a woman with double pupils at that. I'm so envious. Many male sky prides had envious looks in their eyes. Who wouldn't want a powerful, loyal, and peerless beauty to be their guardian? Jun Xiaoyaro also felt a little emotional. Arju wasn't like other women who would more or less accompany Jun Xiaoyaro for a period of time. Arju's companionship was quiet and unobtrusive. Most of the time, he would even ignore her existence. Arju would only appear when Jun Xiaoyaro needed help the most. Who wouldn't cherish such a woman who silently protected and gave her all? Chapter 806. Jun Xiaoyaro also felt that Arju's aura was much stronger than before. Before, Arju was only at the quasi-supreme level. Now, his aura was only slightly weaker than Long Yuan's. Lesser heavenly venerable? Jun Xiaoyaro was surprised. From quasi-supreme to supreme, and then to lesser heavenly venerable. It seemed that he had only advanced by 2 levels, which was not much. But one had to know that in the 7 levels of supreme, each advancement was more difficult than the previous 9 levels of sage. Arju could advance by 2 levels in such a short time, which was already extremely monstrous. But thinking of Arju's polychoria talent, this kind of improvement was not incomprehensible. How dare you be rude to the young master? So what if you are an ancient void dragon celestial venerable? Arju's voice was as cold as frost as he stroked the charred tail zither. If Long Yuan did not know, she did not mind attacking. Long Yuan's level was higher than hers, and he was also an ancient void dragon celestial venerable. But Arju also had the invincible polychoria, which could make up for the difference in level. You are that person. Long Yuan saw that his move was blocked and was about to get angry, but he immediately frowned when he saw Arju. He knew that Arju was the subordinate of the white-robed divine king, Jun Wuhui. Who was Jun Wuhui? He was the most amazing genius of the Jun family in recent times. He had cultivated for the shortest time, but his strength was close to the ancestors of the Jun family. With the Qi into 3 Pure Ones technique, he suppressed the burial ground, the foreign realm, and the world-suppressing sea. He was a hero in the hearts of many cultivators. Even the hostile forces of the Jun family could not help but sigh when Jun Wuhui was mentioned. The white-robed divine king was really a hero. Some people even thought that Jun Wuhui was the peerless figure closest to the heaven-abandoning great emperor in recent times. Even the ancient Void Dragon clan did not want to provoke such a figure. Not to mention Jun Wuhui, even the king of God's 8 troops under Jun Wuhui's command had their own merits and were all peerless figures. Long Yuan calmed down temporarily. In fact, he didn't want to offend the Jun family. Now, can we talk calmly? Jun Xiaoyao asked calmly. If not for the heavenly book, Jun Xiaoyao would not have wasted his breath. Long Yuan frowned slightly and was about to say something. In the depths of the universe, a domineering voice suddenly resounded. Long Yuan, why should we be afraid? The ancient Void Dragon clan and my overlord ancestral hall are not afraid of the Jun family. Along with this domineering cold shout, there was a loud sound. Rumble. In the depths of the starry skies, it was as if countless great stars had shattered. A domineering figure stepped forward with a monstrous aura. Wherever it passed, the void collapsed, and stars fell from the sky. An expert. An absolute expert. In fact, that aura was even stronger than Long Yuan's. A majestic figure appeared. He was clad in pitch-black heavy armor, and his eyes shone with purple light, shooting out terrifying beams of light. That is, on the buried Emperor Star, many geniuses were startled. A great heavenly venerate of the ancient Void Dragon clan had just arrived. Then, one of the 8 divine kings, Arju, appeared. Now, another peerless expert had appeared. This caused everyone to be somewhat astonished. They didn't expect the battle between the Overlord Physique and the Sacred Physique to cause such a chain reaction. It's the people of the Overlord Ancestral Hall. It seems that they can't sit still. In the depths of the universe, the experts of the immortal forces who were watching the show conversed. Long Yarrow had suffered a crushing defeat. It wasn't just about the face of the ancient Void Dragon clan. It was also a disgrace to the Overlord Ancestral Hall. The Overlord Ancestral Hall had a deep foundation, unlike the desolate ancient Sacred Palace. They had always been at their peak, but they had always kept a low profile. The desolate ancient Sacred Palace could only compete with the Overlord Ancestral Hall at its peak, when 3 Sacred Physiques existed at the same time. As for now, only one Sacred Physique Wu Protector was left. Not to mention the Overlord Ancestral Hall, even the Overlord Star Kang family could suppress the desolate ancient Sacred Palace. If Jun Xiaoyao, a complete Sacred Physique, hadn't come and saved the desolate ancient Sacred Palace, the desolate ancient Sacred Palace might have declined forever. However, it was also obvious how much the Overlord Ancestral Hall hated Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao had helped the desolate ancient Sacred Palace rise again. Secondly, he had destroyed the Overlord Star Kang family. Thirdly, he had almost completely defeated the Overlord Long Yarrow and even treated her like a dog. All these actions had made Jun Xiaoyao a thorn in the side of the Overlord Ancestral Hall. Now, the Overlord Ancestral Hall couldn't sit still anymore and sent out an expert. It's him, Ba Tianjue. An expert was surprised. He was a peerless expert of the Overlord Ancestral Hall, and his cultivation had reached the supreme mystique venerable rank. Logically speaking, such a powerhouse would not easily appear and make a move. However, the Overlord had lost miserably this time. It was the most miserable battle in history. This influence would last for a long time, and the Overlord lineage might be the laughingstock of the 9 Heavens immortal realm for a long time. Therefore, the people of the Overlord Ancestral Hall couldn't sit still anymore and showed up. Since when did the Sacred Physique lineage fall so low that we have to rely on schemes to win? Ba Tianjue spoke as soon as he showed up. His voice was mighty and spread across the universe. All the cultivators were stunned when they heard it. The battle between Jun Xiaoyao's avatar and Long Yarrow was called a scheme. The only scheme involved was that Jun Xiaoyao had hidden the 4th seal of the immortal forbidding seal in his avatar. However, this was considered a normal battle tactic, and it had nothing to do with schemes. Besides, the Overlord lineage had once challenged 3 immortal kings of the foreign realm when they were Sacred Physiques. Wasn't that shameless? Besides, Jun Xiaoyao had already exposed the truth. Almost everyone knew about it. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was cold. He didn't expect the Overlord Ancestral Hall to be so shameless. Die for insulting the young master. The terrifying zither music turned into destructive sound waves as Arju made his move. She didn't even care that Ba Tianjue was a supreme mystique venerable. To her, Jun Xiaoyao's reputation was as important as his life. It was something that Arju had to protect. Don't think that I won't dare to touch you just because you're Jun Wuhui's subordinate. When has the Overlord Ancestral Hall ever been afraid of anyone? Ba Tianjue made his move. Purple blood wave. A tyrant fist was unleashed and destroyed the universe. Its might and Long Yarrow Er's tyrant fist were simply not the same concept. What? Is he also a Overlord body? The Sky Prides who didn't know much about the Overlord Ancestral Hall were surprised. The purple blood and Overlord fist were exclusive to the Overlord body of the heavens. You're wrong. Overlord bodies are the same as sacred physiques. There are only a few of them in an era. How can anyone be a Overlord body? Some core experts of the Overlord Ancestral Hall can obtain the concentrated blood essence of the Overlord body and have part of the ability of the Overlord body of the heavens, some Sky Prides explained. I see. Many people understood. Ba Tianjue had the concentrated blood essence of the Overlord body. The concentration was much higher than that of the Conqueror Star's Kang family. It was just like how Jun Xiaoyaro would give his sacred physique blood essence to Wu Hu, Ning Chen, Little Xian Xian, and the others. Although the sacred physique and Overlord body weren't pure-blooded, they could still obtain part of the talent. Boom. Ba Tianjue and Arju exchanged blows. Powerful ripples of magic power surged through the universe, and destructive runes burst out. Chaotic mist appeared in Arju's eyes. The light from his polychoria split heaven and earth, and the zither music swept across the universe. As expected of the polychoria zither lady, one of the king of gods 8. Unfortunately, her realm is still one level lower. If they were in the same realm, Ba Tianjue wouldn't be able to defeat Arju. However, his realm was 2 levels higher than Arju's. Ba Tianjue's fist light was shocking. Purple chi surged as if it had destroyed 3,000 world. Even someone as strong as Arju was forced to retreat. Her delicate body trembled, and blood appeared at the corner of her mouth. There were 7 realms of supremacy, and the difference between each realm was huge. It was far from comparable to the difference between the 9 levels of ascension. On the buried Emperor Star, Jun Xiaoyaro saw a drop of blood at the corner of Arju's mouth. His eyes suddenly became as cold as ice. Everyone could feel that the surrounding temperature seemed to be dropping rapidly. Boom. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped on Long Yarrow Er's head. If you dare to hurt Arju again, I, the Son of God, will kill the Overlord. Chapter 807. Jun Xiaoyao's voice spread in all directions. It could even be heard in the starry sky of the universe. All the Sky Prides felt their scalps go numb, and their gazes turned to Jun Xiaoyaro. Was Jun Xiaoyaro really going to kill the Overlord? If that was the case, it would definitely set off a huge wave. The ancient Void Dragon clan and the Overlord Ancestral Hall would be furious. Perhaps it would set off an unprecedented immortal war that would sweep across the immortal realms. Son of God of the Jun family, stop. Long Yuan couldn't help but shout. How dare you? Ba Tianjue also shouted, and the sound waves shattered the universe. Let's see if I, the Son of God, dare or not. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped heavily on Long Yarrow Er's little head. Long Yarrow Er cried miserably. She wanted to cry but had no tears. She was the Overlord. The indomitable Overlord who dominated the universe. Every generation of Overlords was enough to shock the world. They were the tide of the era. But what about her? Now, she was being stepped on by Jun Xiaoyaro, tied up with a dog chain and used as a bargaining chip. How could the word miserably describe it? Young master, in the starry sky, Arju saw this scene. Her eyes, which were always cold and indifferent, were filled with the vicissitudes of life. However, a slight ripple appeared in her eyes. This little boy who she had been protecting since he was born. Now, he had grown to the point where he had the ability to protect her. This made Arju feel that her choice was not wrong. The person she protected also wanted to protect her. Jun Xiaoyao, are you going to start an immortal war? Can you bear the price? The anger in Ba Tianjue's eyes seemed to be able to burn the 9 realms. He was truly infuriated by Jun Xiaoyao. You can try and see if I, the Son of God, have the gut. Jun Xiaoyao flicked his sleeves and said indifferently. Arju had been his protector since he was young. She had been silently protecting Jun Xiaoyaro without asking for anything in return. Jun Xiaoyaro was an extremely protective person. There was no way Jun Xiaoyaro was going to stand by and watch a beauty like her get hurt just to protect him. In fact, when he saw the drop of blood at the corner of Ju's lips, he was shocked. Jun Xiaoyaro had already sentenced Ba Tianjue to death. No. It was a death sentence for the entire Overlord Ancestral Hall. When he had the ability in the future, he would definitely destroy the Overlord Body Ancestral Hall and completely cut off this inheritance. In the future, Overlord Body Ancestral Hall might not even know when they died. The only thing that brought about their extinction was the drop of blood at the corner of Ju's mouth. When the geniuses on the buried Emperor Star saw this scene, they all sighed incomparably. Who would dare to threaten a supreme mystic venerate powerhouse in the Great Saint stage? Only Jun Xiaoyaro dared. Jun family's son of God, let's talk things over. There's no need for this, Long Yuan hurriedly said. The ancient Void Dragon clan originally didn't have much connection with the Overlord Body Ancestral Hall. The only connection was Long Yarrow. It could be said that without Long Yarrow, these two immortal forces wouldn't have any interaction. Now, Ba Tianjue was provoking them for the sake of the Overlord Body's face. However, he might sacrifice Long Yarrow. Long Yuan naturally didn't want to see this scene, so he wanted to be a peacemaker and hurriedly spoke to stop it. Hey! Is this the attitude of someone who injured me, Jun Xiaoyaro? Jun Xiaoyaro was still as cold as ever. Although he was only in the Great Saint stage, he wasn't afraid of facing the great heavenly venerate Long Yuan and the supreme mystic venerate Ba Tianjue. The atmosphere fell into a suffocating stagnation. In this atmosphere, a terrifying and boundless aura suddenly came from a place extremely far away. That aura carried a sense of desolation, and at the same time, a boundless battle intent swept across the endless space. The entire buried Emperor Star, including some of the Immortal Forces elders who were hiding in the dark, felt a strong and boundless battle intent. This aura is so strong. Could it be that another big shot has appeared? Who could it be? Could it be that the Jun family's experts have appeared? Many Immortal Forces experts were surprised and guessing. Long Yuan and Ba Tianjue had appeared on Long Yarrow's side. Jun Xiaoyaro naturally couldn't only have one guardian, Ju. The Jun family's people might have appeared. However, after sensing this aura, Ju's expression revealed a hint of surprise. Light flickered in his double pupils. This aura, could it be him? No, it's impossible for him to come here. Just as everyone was still in shock, Yi Zichen suddenly spoke. A terrifying wave swept over from the depths of the universe. It was a vast sea of magic power, and a terrifying scene of thousands of beasts galloping appeared. Golden Swanni, Pishio, Zhenhu, Fei, Bai Fang, all kinds of ancient beasts gathered into a sea of destructive beasts and bombarded Ba Tianjue, Long Yuan, and the others. The aura of a supreme mystic venerable. Who is it? Ba Tianjue's expression changed. His fist shook the world, and purple light surged, shaking the 8 directions. Boom! After the collision, Ba Tianjue's figure retreated a few hundred feet, smashing many ancient stars. His chest shook, and a hint of shock appeared in his eyes. As for Long Yuan, he was injured and retreated, coughing up a mouthful of blood. Although he was an expert of the ancient Void Dragon clan, his cultivation level was one level lower than a supreme mystic venerable. Could it be that the Jun family's experts have come to show their strength to the ancient Void Dragon clan and the Tyrant clan? The big shot in the dark was surprised and very concerned about the situation. Under everyone's gaze, a stalwart figure stepped through the air. With every step he took, the entire universe seemed to tremble. The aura of a supreme mystic venerable was boundless. It was a grey-haired man, and his cold face was crisscrossed with knife scars. The flames of war burned around him, and there was a wild killing intent. He seemed to be the embodiment of war, and his life was filled with the flames of war. At the same time, there was a wild aura around him, and there were countless beasts circling around him. Who is he? Some of the geniuses were confused. There was no such person in the Jun family. It is indeed him. Ju's eyes flashed. The grey-haired man did not say anything. His cold eyes were vertical like those of a wild beast. He stomped his foot and charged toward Ba Tianjue, wild heaven-slaying seal. The gray-haired man clawed with his 5 fingers, and a wild magic power gathered into a destructive seal. It was as if it was going to destroy everything. The galaxy rolled backward, and the void shook violently. The surging flames of war burned and boiled. Could it be? Ba Tianjue's eyes trembled. He seemed to have realized who the man in front of him was. But why would he appear here? However, there was no time for Ba Tianjue to think. He could only attack with all his might. The purple fist light illuminated the pitch-black universe. Boom! An unprecedented collision erupted, and it was as if a giant ancient star had exploded. The battle between the 2 supreme mystique venerables was a shocking sight to behold. Countless runes of laws appeared on the surface of the buried Emperor Star to resist the shockwaves caused by the battle between the 2 mystic venerables. However, what made everyone incomparably shocked was that, although they were at the same level, Ba Tianjue was at an absolute disadvantage and was forced to retreat. The gray-haired man charged forward once again. With a ferocious appearance, his palms appeared as though they were about to split the heavens. With a loud explosion, Ba Tianjue's body was split into 2. Bang! Boundless purple blood splashed out, sprinkling all over the universe. In all directions, the faces of countless people were dumbfounded and shocked. A supreme mystic venerate's body was destroyed in just a few moves. Moreover, it was Ba Tianjue's body that contained the blood essence of the tyrant body. Wasn't he too ferocious? Many people were shocked as they looked at the gray-haired man. Where exactly did he come from? He was ridiculously strong. With a shocking roar, Ba Tianjue's primordial spirit burst forth and tried to escape. His primordial spirit shouted with shock and anger, "It's you, God of War barbarian. Why are you here?" Hearing this, the sky prides on the buried Emperor Star and the surrounding people were stunned. Only then did some people come back to their senses. Their pupils were also filled with extreme shock. It's him. White-clothed deity King Jun Wuhui's subordinate. One of the deity king's 8 deity kings, God of War barbarian. Chapter 808. In Jun Xiaoyao's previous generation, the most outstanding person in the entire Jun family was undoubtedly the divine King Jun Wuhui. In that generation, there was a saying, "No matter how many geniuses you are, you can't even compare to a corner of the white robe." From this, one could see how famous the white-robed divine King Jun Wuhui was. However, he was not the most famous person. There were also his subordinates, the divine King 8. Every one of them was a hero among men, each with their own merits, an outstanding existence. It was already enough for an ordinary powerhouse to have such a loyal follower. Jun Wuhui had a total of 8. At this moment, there was a majestic man with a stalwart figure, a crisscrossed scar on his face, and a head of grey hair that fluttered without wind. He was one of the divine King 8, the Heaven Punisher, War God Man. "It's my father's subordinate." Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep. Until now, Jun Xiaoyao had already seen 3 of the divine King 8. The Polychoria Zither girl, Arju. The Demon King, Li Xin. The Heaven Punisher, War God Man. Arju had always been by his side as his guardian. Li Xin followed Jun Wuhui and guarded the eternal burial ground alone. Now, where did this Heaven Punisher, War God Man, come from? For some reason, Jun Xiaoyao felt a faint sense of uneasiness in his heart. On the other side, in the depths of the universe, Ba Tianjue, whose physical body had been destroyed, could only escape with his primordial spirit. The Overlord Ancestral Hall will remember this matter. We will not let it go. Mph. You slandered the young master and injured the people of the divine King 8. You still want to live? War God Man snorted coldly and stretched out his hand. Countless beast shadows appeared and turned into a fierce tide, wanting to drown Ba Tianjue's primordial spirit and kill him. However, at this moment, the entire universe seemed to have stopped for a moment. An indescribable supreme power enveloped the entire buried Emperor Star and the surrounding universe through billions of layers of space. The entire buried Emperor Star released an unprecedented light. All kinds of law patterns bloomed. This was the highest level of defense, which meant that an incomparably terrifying force was affecting this place. Of course, the first one to bear the brunt was the war god Barbarian. He felt a fatal aura locking onto him. His glabella felt like it was about to split open, and a drop of blood flowed out. The power that was separated by billions of layers of space was not something a mystique venerable rank like him could withstand. It wasn't even something that supremacy creation could resist. However, there was no fear in war god Barbarian's eyes. His beast-like pupils were filled with cold killing intent. Haha, that's great. Dominating Sky Extinction's primordial spirit was incomparably glad, feeling that he had escaped from death. The real peerless big shot of the Overlord Ancestral Hall had made his move. How dare you destroy my body? The next one to die is you. Tyrannical Sky Extinction's primordial spirit was filled with resentment. However, at this moment, in another ancient, primitive, and dangerous starfield, there was a dead and uninhabited ancient star. On the ancient star, there was only one ancient tree. It was so tall that its crown reached the Milky Way. This was the longevity ancient tree, and it contained boundless life essence energy. Although it was still inferior to the world tree, it was still a rare treasure, much more precious than the elixir of immortality. At this moment, an old man was sitting cross-legged on top of the longevity ancient tree's crown. The old man had white hair, but his cheeks were as smooth as a baby's. He was wearing an ancient and tattered robe, and it was impossible to tell which era he belonged to. His eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of history, as if countless years had passed. The old man was holding a bamboo fishing rod in his hand. The fishing line was condensed from the god law of order, and it hung in the dark depths of the universe. At this moment, the god law of order trembled slightly. The old man's withered lips curled into a faint smile. It's taken the bait. Boom. The old man swung the fishing rod in his hand. Endless Milky Way scattered like water droplets. An incomparably huge ancient beast was caught by the old man from the depths of the universe's Milky Way. This ancient beast was dozens of times bigger than the ancient star of life. Upon closer inspection, it was a star-devouring ancient beast. If anyone saw this, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would pop out. The star-devouring ancient beast was an absolute ferocious beast in the universe. It could devour the sun, moon, stars, and many life stars. Even someone as strong as a prime would be devoured if they encountered a star-devouring ancient beast. However, at that moment, the old man had a relaxed expression on his face. He was using the god law of order as a line to catch the star-devouring ancient beast. However, just as the old man was about to reap the rewards of the battle, he suddenly frowned, and his movements paused slightly. At this moment, the star-devouring ancient beast swung its body. Its huge body, which was comparable to the immemorial Kuan Peng, shattered countless stars, and the fragments scattered in all directions. The star-devouring ancient beast disappeared into the dark depths of the universe. Seeing this, the old man was not angry. He only frowned, and his eyes, which were filled with vicissitudes of time, seemed to be able to see through endless space. Ha! Now that the water has become murky, all kinds of rotten fish and shrimps have escaped. It's the Tyrant Ancestral Hall. That little thing, the Tyrant Sovereign, has just broken through from the Chaos Dao Venerate to the First Tribulation Quasi-Emperor. How dare he provoke the Jun family? The old man shook his head slightly. Then, the fishing rod in his hand shook. The fishing line formed by the god law of order scattered, broke through billions of dimensions, and pierced through the universe, and rushed toward an ancient land. Humph! There seemed to be a faint groan in the void. The seventh forefather of the Jun family, Jun Tai-E. Suddenly, a voice filled with coldness resounded. At the same time, there was also a hint of fear. This was the old man who was in seclusion under the longevity ancient tree and fishing for stars. It was the seventh forefather of the Jun family, Jun Tai-E. Previously, the Jun family had participated in the immortal battle in the Huangtian mystic realm. There were also quasi-emperors from other mystic realms who attacked from a distance. In the end, they were stopped by the sixth forefather of the Jun family, Jun Taixian, who was drifting in the universe. Later, Jun Taixian destroyed Zulong with a single sword strike. The seventh forefather of the Jun family, Jun Tai-yi, who was fishing for stars, was a figure of the same generation as Jun Tai-shen. His strength was naturally unfathomable. Ha! If the tyrant sovereign of the tyrant ancestral hall had awakened, I might have been afraid. But with a junior like you, Jun Tai-yi smiled. There was no sign of life from the tyrant ancestral hall. It was obvious that the tyrant sovereign, who had broken through to the first tribulation quasi-emperor, was extremely afraid of Jun Tai-yi and did not dare to attack casually. Jun Tai-yi's eyes were deep as he looked somewhere. There's not much time left in the foreign realm. The seed of my Jun family's generation is called Jun Xiaoyao. He's a pretty good kid. Jun Tai-yi revealed a gratified smile and continued to fish for stars in the universe with his eyes closed. Back at the buried Emperor star, everyone could feel the supreme power in the unseen world. This is definitely not the power of a seventh stage supremacy. A quasi-emperor is secretly making a move. Some of the important figures who were watching the show were surprised. They did not expect the battle between the holy body and the overlord body to have such far-reaching effects. Even a quasi-emperor was secretly making a move. Everyone felt a sense of suffocation. Even someone as strong as barbarian god of war felt like he was being suppressed to the extreme. The space between his eyebrows was about to split open, and blood dripped out. Jun Xiaoyao's expression did not change. He believed that his family would not remain indifferent. Sure enough, in less than a quarter of an hour, the supreme mighty force dissipated. Another powerful force is making a move. It's the Jun family's quasi-emperor. In the depths of the starry sky, many important figures were surprised. The Jun family was indeed as strong as before. They would not allow their own family to be bullied. Sure enough, they made a move. I wonder which ancient ancestor it is. Jun Xiaoyao smiled indifferently. He had long predicted this scene. Ba Tianjue's primordial spirit, who had fled far away, was dumbfounded when he saw this scene. The quasi-emperor of the tyrant ancestral hall had actually stopped out of fear. Now, can you still run? Barbarian god of war's tone was cold. He stretched out a big hand, and the flames of war burned. The shadow of a beast appeared and surged forward like a wave. No. Ba Tianjue let out a cry of despair. Endless waves of magic power drowned his primordial spirit. The tyrant ancestral hall's supreme mystic sovereign had fallen. Chapter 809. At this moment, the entire buried Emperor star was dead silent. On the buried Emperor star, many geniuses' minds were buzzing and their expressions were blank. For many of them, this was the first time they had seen a supreme mystic venerable fall. In their eyes, such an expert was a heaven-like existence. But now, he had fallen so easily. This caused people to be alarmed. Many people looked at the barbarian god of war with shock, astonishment, and amazement. Oh my god, he killed a mystic venerable of the overlord ancestral hall just like that. As expected of the 8 divine kings. Nonsense, this is someone who followed the white-clothed divine king. There are no weak soldiers under a fierce general. He must have the courage. Many geniuses had yearning looks in their eyes. They also wanted to kill all their enemies to their heart's content. Then, barbarian god locked his gaze on Long Yuan. Long Yuan's hair stood on end, and a bone-chilling intent rushed up his spine. He was like a prey that was targeted by a hunter. Fellow cultivator, I didn't hurt anyone. Long Yuan hurriedly waved his hand. He had only attacked once, and it was blocked by a Jew without causing any damage. Many people were speechless when they saw this scene. Long Yuan, who had the appearance of an expert, was now as timid as a turtle. However, everyone could understand. After all, a higher realm could suppress someone. Moreover, even a mystic venerable was killed by barbarian god in a few moves. It would be strange if Long Yuan wasn't afraid. Barbarian god coldly retracted his gaze and ignored them. He withdrew his mystic venerable aura and descended on the buried Emperor star. Arju followed closely behind. On the buried Emperor star, Jun Xiaoyao was holding Long Yao by a dog leash made from divine order chains. Long Yao's limbs grew out again, and she was about to stand up. Jun Xiaoyao kicked Long Yao's little butt. Get down. Have you ever seen a dog walking on 2 legs? Long Yarrow was kicked to the ground again. You! Long Yarrow's face was red. She was kicked in the butt by Jun Xiaoyaro in front of everyone. Since she was young, when had she ever suffered such humiliation? Although Long Yuan was sometimes strict with her, he would never hit her. He was even closer to her than his own granddaughter. But today, she seemed to have experienced an unprecedented nightmare. It was one thing to be defeated. Now, he didn't even have the right to be born as a human, no, a dragon. Although dragons and dogs were both animals. But she was a little female dragon, not a little bitch. In the eyes of this son of God, you are just a dog. Looking up to me is the attitude you should have. A cold smile appeared on Jun Xiaoyao's handsome face. If not for the fact that Long Yarrow still had value as a bargaining chip, he didn't mind killing him. However, looking at Long Yarrow who was lying on the ground, wearing a necklace and tears in the corners of her eyes, Long Yarrow was stunned. Why was there an inexplicable joy in his heart? Could it be that he had awakened something strange? Jun Xiaoyaro shook his head slightly. When he came back to his senses, War God Barbarian and Arju were standing in front of him. War God Barbarian was tall and muscular. His skin was bronze and covered in scars. His grey hair fluttered in the wind, and there were 2 crisscrossing scars on his cold face. His beast-like vertical pupils were filled with wildness. This was a man who looked like a demon. In terms of temperament, he was not inferior to the demon king Li Xin that Jun Xiaoyaro had met in the burial ground. Anyone who got close to this man would feel oppressed and suffocated. But at this moment, facing Jun Xiaoyaro, War God Barbarian restrained his aura and even pulled out a smile that he had never shown before. This smile was a little stiff and unnatural. Arju was surprised when he saw this. War God Barbarian knew how to smile. This was simply unheard of. White-robed divine King Jun Wuhui's subordinates, War God Barbarian, greets the young master. War God Barbarian knelt down on one knee in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. This caused all the heavens' prides to be stunned. One had to know that this fierce person who knelt down in front of Jun Xiaoyaro was a supreme mystic venerable, and he had just killed another supreme mystic venerable. Such an expert actually knelt down in front of Jun Xiaoyaro without hesitation. Senior, please rise. Thank you for your help this time. Jun Xiaoyaro helped War God Barbarian up with one hand. Jun Xiaoyaro was still very respectful towards these subordinates who followed his father. Like father, like son. Young master's grace is admirable. War God Barbarian's tone was full of praise. He had dominated the ancient road and completely defeated the overlord. He saw Jun Wuhui's grace in Jun Xiaoyaro. In fact, the student might even surpass the master. But when he thought of Jun Wuhui, a dark cloud flashed across War God Barbarian's eyes. War God Barbarian, weren't you following the Lord to the border of the foreign lands? What's wrong? Arju hesitated. This matter. War God Barbarian paused. The uneasiness in Jun Xiaoyao's heart surfaced again. But he also understood that this matter was not suitable to be discussed in public. Senior, let's talk about this later. Jun Xiaoyaro said. War God Barbarian nodded. Arju. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Arju. Young master. Arju nodded. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped forward and personally wiped away the blood on Arju's lips. Young master. Arju was stunned for a moment. She did not expect Jun Xiaoyaro to do this. Fortunately, War God Senior Barbarian killed Ba Tianjue today. Otherwise, I would be very unhappy. Jun Xiaoyaro said. Young master has grown up. Now you want to protect Arju. Arju's lips curled into a beautiful smile. Although she did not ask for anything in return. Seeing that Jun Xiaoyaro cared about her so much, she was still happy. If I had the strength, I would protect anyone I want to protect. Unfortunately, I'm not as strong as Arju. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. Arju believes that with young master's talent, it won't be long before you surpass Arju's cultivation, Arju said. At this moment, a cough sounded. Ahem, that. Son of God of the Jun family, shouldn't we have a talk? Long Yuan also retracted his aura and descended on the buried emperor star. His expression was a little awkward, but there was nothing he could do. Jun Xiaoyaro was chatting with war god Barbarian and Arju as if nothing had happened. But the problem was that Jun Xiaoyaro was holding Long Yarrow Er's hand like a little bitch. What was going on? Did the ancient Void Dragon clan not care about their reputation? Jun Xiaoyao's expression did not change, but there was a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Earlier, this son of God wanted to talk, but you wanted to fight. Now you want to talk. Long Yuan's face alternated between green and white, and his heart was filled with hatred. However, he did not hate Jun Xiaoyaro, but Ba Tianjue. If Ba Tianjue had not attacked so impulsively, the situation might not have turned out this way. At this moment, golden light bloomed in the void again. A figure wearing golden armor appeared. Hey, it's the executors of the ancient road. Why did they only appear now? Some of the prodigies looked over. The executor of the ancient road looked a little embarrassed. It could be said that it was a fight between immortals just now. He could not afford to offend either side. However, the executor still braced himself and said, "Son of God, we executors also hope that Son of God can spare Ba Tianjue's life for now. After all, you are all qualified to become seeds." Seeds? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flickered. "Young master, the executors are related to the gatekeepers," Battle God Barbarian said. Jun Xiaoyaro nodded. The gatekeepers were very prestigious, and were revered by countless cultivators in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. They were a group of selfless experts who had guarded the borders of the Outlander realm for countless epochs. Some of the executors of the ancient road were descendants of the gatekeepers. Jun Xiaoyaro was only using Long Yarrow as a bargaining chip. "As long as you agree to this Son of God's conditions, I can let Long Yarrow go," Jun Xiaoyaro said. "Son of God is truly magnanimous," the executor said, clasping his hands in praise. Long Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. As long as they could negotiate, it was fine. "The conditions are simple," Jun Xiaoyaro said. "This Son of God wants Long Yarrow heavenly tomes." Chapter 8:10. What? Heavenly book? The geniuses were startled at first, then their expressions changed. Everyone in the Nine Heavens celestial realm knew about the 9 great heavenly books. They represented the 9 ultimate Taos. Ordinary geniuses would soar to the sky after obtaining a heavenly book. They would cultivate a Tao to the extreme. Besides, there were rumors that if one could collect all 9 great heavenly books, they would be able to uncover their secrets and see a never-before-seen path. Although no one had ever collected all 9 great heavenly books, that didn't stop the cultivators from fantasizing. Some of the geniuses also came to a realization. They instantly understood why Long Yarrow had such a terrifying recovery ability. Even with the heavenly tyrant body and the bloodline of the ancient Void Dragon, her recovery ability couldn't be that strong. The only possibility was, so it's one of the 9 great heavenly books, the Life Book. Everyone was enlightened. Their previous doubts were answered. The Life Book could also be called the Book of Life, the Book of Life, and so on. It controlled the Tao of life. In the ancient records, there were many geniuses who had obtained the Life Book. Although the Life Book couldn't bring a powerful attack to a cultivator, it could bring an insane vitality and recovery ability for those who had the Life Book. Regrowing a broken limb was nothing compared to it. Regrowing with a drop of blood, evolving the flesh, recovering the soul, nourishing the primordial spirit, and endless vitality. It could be said that as long as the vitality wasn't completely destroyed, it could be recovered with time. This ability was simply heaven-defying. It could be said to be the best life-saving ability. No wonder the great conqueror's recovery ability is so terrifying. He can regrow his limbs instantly. It turns out that he cultivated the Life Book. Unfortunately, so what if he cultivated the Life Book? In the end, he still lost to the Son of God of the Jun family. The Son of God of the Jun family's body is already unparalleled. If he obtains the Life Book, it's simply, some people didn't dare to imagine anymore. Jun Xiaoyao's physical body was already unparalleled throughout the ages. If he cultivated the Life Book, who could destroy Jun Xiaoyao's body in the future? Even challenging someone of a higher level wouldn't be a problem. Unless their cultivation was several levels higher than Jun Xiaoyao's, It was almost impossible to injure Jun Xiaoyao. Impossible. You can't have the Book of Life. Long Yarrow who is lying on the ground, is agitated and can't help but shout out. She had already suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Jun Xiaoyao. If he allowed Jun Xiaoyao to obtain the Book of Life, he would not be able to do anything. Then wouldn't it be even more impossible for Long Yarrow to make a comeback, without even the slightest bit of hope? Bang! Jun Xiaoyao kicked Long Yarrow's little butt again. Ah! Long Yarrow moaned in pain. Her little butt was red and swollen. There's no room for a dog to speak here, Jun Xiaoyao said coldly. Long Yarrow gritted her teeth, feeling incomparably humiliated. This kind of humiliation and torture was even more humiliating than losing a battle. However, in this kind of extreme humiliation, there was also a kind of indescribable feeling of depravity spreading in the bottom of Long Yarrow's heart. This indescribable feeling caused her snow-white skin to turn pink. His entire being seemed to have become a little strange. Jun Xiaoyao did not care about Long Yarrow and looked at Long Yuan. He was the target of the transaction. Long Yuan's hand also clenched. To be honest, he really did not want to give the Book of Life to Jun Xiaoyao. Although Long Yarrow lost miserably this time, part of the reason was because Jun Xiaoyao used his Dharma body to play with Long Yarrow. It made Long Yarrow's state of mind a little unstable. If Long Yarrow could be brave after being humiliated and concentrate on cultivation, Long Yuan also had a way to let Long Yarrow continue to improve. Even if he did not directly defeat Jun Xiaoyao, he would at least try to catch up. But if he gave the Book of Life to Jun Xiaoyao, it would undoubtedly make Jun Xiaoyao even more powerful. There was almost no hope for Long Yarrow to make a comeback. Looking at the silent Long Yuan, Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a cold smile. He stepped on Long Yarrow's little head. It seems that there is no room for negotiation. The Son of God gives face to the executors, but you don't give face to the Son of God. Seeing this, the executors frowned and looked at Long Yuan. Fellow Daoist Long Yuan, let's both take a step back. Long Yuan sighed and flicked his wrist, throwing an ancient scroll to Jun Xiaoyao. The Book of Life was not on Long Yarrow but in Long Yuan's hands. Jun Xiaoyao caught it. This scroll was bronze in color, as if it was stained with copper green, and it looked incomparably simple. Jun Xiaoyao did not have to judge whether the Book of Life was real or fake. Because he had 3 heavenly tomes, he could naturally feel that it was real. The Book of Life fell into the hands of the Son of God of the Jun family. It's really like adding wings to a tiger. Yeah, if the Son of God of the Jun family can collect the other heavenly tomes, he will be even stronger. No one knew that this was the 4th heavenly tomes that Jun Xiaoyao had obtained. Body Book, Space Book, Treasure Book, and Life Book. Of the 9 heavenly tomes, Jun Xiaoyao had obtained 4. Almost half of them were in Jun Xiaoyao's possession. Of course, Jun Xiaoyao would not deliberately publicize it, as it would cause trouble for himself. Long Yuan suppressed the anger in his heart and said coldly, "All right, I've given you the Book of Life. You can let her go now." Long Yarrow did not dare to say anything else, for fear of being kicked in the butt by Jun Xiaoyao again. However, she also felt despair in her heart. Now that Jun Xiaoyao had the Book of Life, it would be even harder for her to turn the tables. However, Jun Xiaoyao revealed a playful smile. He shook his head lightly. "Are you playing with me?" Seeing Jun Xiaoyao's attitude, Long Yuan was so angry that his body trembled. If it weren't for the buried Emperor Star's nomological suppression, his aura would have exploded. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was still calm as he said, "I, the Son of God, am not such a person. If we had a peaceful conversation from the beginning, that was indeed the only condition, and I would have let her go. However, you ignored my wishes to talk to you and chose to use force. You even injured my path protector. Shouldn't you settle this score?" Jun Xiaoyao was not someone who would go back on his words. However, he was also someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Jun Xiaoyao was not greedy. All he wanted was to have a good conversation with them from the very beginning. However, he had to use force and even injured Arju. Jun Xiaoyao was naturally not so easy to talk to. "You're pushing your luck." Long Yuan's old face was ashen, and his heart was about to explode. Long Yarrow Er's delicate body was also trembling. She was quite angry, but she did not dare to speak anymore. Then you can take it that I'm pushing my luck. It just so happens that the ancient road is lonely. It's quite good to have a female pet to accompany me, Jun Xiaoyaro said as he pulled. At the other end of the dog leash, Long Yarrow who had a collar around her neck, was lying at his feet. Long Yuan's heart was bleeding when he saw this. He squeezed out the words from between his teeth. What other conditions do you have? Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly. His handsome face looked very peaceful, and he even looked a little amiable. I've heard that the ancient Void Dragon tribe has a precious treasure called the Spring of Life. Buzz, when he heard Jun Xiaoyaro mention the Spring of Life, Long Yuan's head buzzed. His vision turned black, and he almost fainted. Jun Xiaoyaro was treating the ancient Void Dragon clan like pigs to be slaughtered. Chapter 8:11. They were dragons, not pigs. It was obvious that Jun Xiaoyaro was out to rip them off. The Spring of Life was one of the most precious treasures in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. It was comparable to the World Tree. A drop of the Spring of Life could cure the dead and bring bones back to life. It could also replenish life essence and was a rare alchemy material. It had many wonderful uses. Even the ancient Void Dragon tribe only had one drop of the Spring of Life. In the Nine Heavens immortal realm, a drop of the Spring of Life could be sold for a sky-high price. This is extortion. Long Yuan roared like an angry lion. Even with his mental state as a great heavenly venerate, he couldn't remain calm. Humph, what's your attitude toward the young master? War God Barbarian stepped out, although he didn't reveal any aura. Although he didn't reveal his aura, his beast-like eyes were emitting a dangerous cold light. Long Yuan choked. He couldn't release the pent-up anger in his heart. As the great elder of the ancient Void Dragon tribe, he had never felt so humiliated. Moreover, he was humiliated by a young man. This young man was too terrifying. Even the surrounding geniuses were speechless, let alone Long Yuan. They didn't expect Jun Xiaoyaro to be so bold as to extort them. The ancient Void Dragon tribe was one of the most mysterious and powerful dragon tribes. Although they kept a low profile, no one dared to provoke them. Yet, they were being ripped off by Jun Xiaoyaro. The executors of the ancient road's lips twitched, but he wisely chose to remain silent. He was only here to mediate. There was no need to stir up trouble for himself. Of course, you can choose to refuse. I, the son of God, just have another dog, Jun Xiaoyaro said indifferently. Demon, he's a demon. Long Yarrow who was lying on the ground, repeatedly repeated in her heart. Long Yuan's face twitched. He couldn't let Long Yarrow become Jun Xiaoyao's dog. Wouldn't that be rubbing the faces of the ancient Void Dragon tribe and the Overlord Ancestral Hall on the ground? Besides, Long Yarrow was a rare member of the ancient Void Dragon tribe. She had the ancient Golden Dragon bloodline, which was extraordinary. Strictly speaking, Long Yarrow ancient Golden Dragon bloodline hadn't fully awakened. Once completely awakened, Long Yarrow strength would undergo a qualitative change. There was no way the ancient Void Dragons would give up on Long Yarrow I need to contact the clan. Long Yuan exhaled and said in a deep voice. Although he was the supreme elder of the ancient Void Dragon clan, he did not have the right to decide where the Spring of Life should go. As one of the most ancient and rare bloodlines of the Dragon clan, the ancient Void Dragon clan naturally had more powerful experts. But so what? Didn't he see that the quasi-emperor of Overlord Ancestral Hall had stopped? Therefore, even if Long Yuan called for more powerful people in the clan, it would be useless. It was better to think about how to solve the problem. Sure, but this son of God's patience is limited. I'll give you a result within 7 days, Jun Xiaoyaro said. Long Yuan nodded coldly and left. He wasn't afraid that Jun Xiaoyaro would do anything to Long Yarrow As the successor of a clan of the remote antiquity, he still needed to maintain his dignity. And the executors of the ancient road were here as well. After Long Yuan left, the atmosphere of the buried Emperor Star eased up. Then, an earth-shattering uproar erupted. What happened today was enough to be praised by people for a long time. Oh my God, the son of God of the Jun family is really heaven-defying. The unprecedented battle between the sacred body and the overlord body is enough to go down in history. That's right. His Dharma body could fight with the overlord for so long, and his true body suppressed the overlord. That's right. When the Son of God's true body stepped out, I felt like my scalp was going to explode. Many talented cultivators looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with blazing eyes. The male cultivators worshipped him fanatically, while the female cultivators were fanatically infatuated with him. Since ancient times, Jun Xiaoyaro was the only one who could play with the sacred body of the overlord like this. Not to mention that after the death of the Dark Venerable of the Overlord Ancestral Hall, even the quasi-emperors couldn't do anything about it. Although these things had nothing to do with Jun Xiaoyaro directly, they were all indirectly related to him. Jun Xiaoyaro had once again refreshed the world's understanding of him today. Young Master Jun is too handsome. Brother, this is the first time I feel that someone can beat you. Yu Yunchang had also become Jun Xiaoyao's little fangirl. She didn't have the reservedness of a princess of the Ascension Jin dynasty at all. Yu, looking at his cheap sister who instantly switched sides, the Ascension King shook his head helplessly. He looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with a deep gaze and murmured in his heart, "No wonder he's an existence that can compete with the heavens." At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro was the center of attention of everyone. Even the many immortal forces in the universe were sizing up Jun Xiaoyaro. Some of them were kind, some were curious, and some were cold. Master. Princess Longji returned to her human form and came to Jun Xiaoyaro. Although she was injured and looked a little disheveled, it didn't diminish her elegance as the princess of the dragon race. "It's all my fault. Sorry to trouble you, Master." Princess Longji bowed to Jun Xiaoyaro. Long Yaro, who was being led by a dog leash, actually felt a sense of empathy. She and Princess Longji were both from the dragon race. One was treated as a mount, while the other was being led by a dog leash. However, unlike Long Yaro, Princess Longji had already submitted to Jun Xiaoyaro wholeheartedly. "It's all right." Jun Xiaoyaro waved his hand. He had come here for the overlord. It had nothing to do with Princess Longji. However, Princess Longji clearly thought that Jun Xiaoyaro was here to save her. The Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's opportunity here is not bad. "Go and accept the inheritance," Jun Xiaoyaro said casually. No. Such a precious opportunity should belong to you, Master." Princess Longji hurriedly rejected. "You don't have to do that. If it's your opportunity, it's yours. If there's something I need, I'll take it," Jun Xiaoyaro said. Then, Princess Longji nodded and went to accept the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's inheritance. The Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor had one of his fingers severed by a mysterious genius when he was young. After that, the mysterious genius disappeared. Who could it be? Jun Xiaoyaro thought of this rumor and couldn't help but be curious. In the next few days, Princess Longji also began to accept the Nine-Finger Sage Dragon Emperor's inheritance. There were various secret skills and secret manuals that were very valuable. After Princess Longji cultivated them, she could also pass them on to the dragon human race in the monarch's court. As for the other opportunities, Jun Xiaoyao only took some elixirs of immortality and divine elixirs. There was nothing else that interested him. The lifebook was as valuable to him as the great emperor's opportunity. 7 days are almost up. They should be here soon, Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. He was sure that the ancient Void Dragon tribe would definitely compromise. Because Long Yaro's status in the ancient Void Dragon tribe was the same as Jun Xiaoyao's in the Jun family. The ancient Void Dragon tribe would not give up on Long Yaro, this seed. "Once I get my hands on the Spring of Life, my powers will be transformed once more." Jun Xiaoyaro smirked. He didn't choose the Spring of Life on a whim. It was because the Spring of Life was very useful to him at this stage. Chapter 8:12. Firstly, the Spring of Life was very helpful to Jun Xiaoyao's cultivation of the Lifebook. The Spring of Life played an important role in Long Yaro's ability to comprehend the Lifebook so quickly. With the Spring of Life and Jun Xiaoyao's monstrous talent, he was able to quickly advance. In a short period of time, he was able to comprehend the mysteries of the Lifebook. Secondly, The spring of life was also very helpful to Zhun Xiaoyao's innerverse. Right now, Zhun Xiaoyao's innerverse was still deathly still. There were no living creatures in it. If he had the spring of life, once Zhun Xiaoyao's cultivation increased, he would be able to give birth to living creatures in his innerverse. The spring of life would be an important part of nurturing life. Zhun Xiaoyao was making preparations for himself, planning ahead of time. If anyone knew what Zhun Xiaoyao was thinking, they would definitely be shocked. Zhun Xiaoyao had a very clear goal and plan for his cultivation path. 7 days later, Long Yuan arrived at the buried Emperor Star with a gloomy face. He coldly looked at Zhun Xiaoyao and said, "You won't go back on your word this time, right?" Zhun Xiaoyao gently smiled. "I, the son of God, have always been magnanimous and magnanimous. Naturally, I won't do such a thing. If pushed too far, even a dog would jump over a wall, let alone the ancient void dragon race." Zhun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, knew when to stop and when to stop. However, when he said that, the mouths of all the surrounding prodigies twitched. What a magnanimous way of treating others. Wonderful. When Long Yuan heard this, he was so angry that his nose almost became crooked. He was a grand heavenly venerate, but Zhun Xiaoyao had made his Dao heart unstable. His mentality was about to collapse. "Big brother Xiaoyao, this is a shrimp pig heart." Jiang Luoli clapped her hands and laughed. Only Zhun Xiaoyao could make a grand heavenly venerate so angry. "Take it." Long Yuan waved his hand, and a crystal that emitted spatial fluctuations fell into Zhun Xiaoyao's hand. Upon closer inspection, there was a miniature spring within the crystal. Immortal light and spiritual mist rose from it, making it look like an immortal spring. Zhun Xiaoyao probed it with his divine sense and nodded slightly. This was indeed the spring of life. There were only a few of them in the entire 9 heavens immortal realm. Even the ancient Void Dragon clan only had one of them, and Zhun Xiaoyao had managed to pry it away. "All right, let him go." Long Yuan's face was cold. Zhun Xiaoyao waved his hand, and the dog leash in his hand disappeared. Long Yao could finally stand up. She turned to look at Zhun Xiaoyao and gritted her teeth. Just as she was about to say something, she was interrupted by Zhun Xiaoyao. "Stop spouting meaningless threats. Believe me, if you provoke me again in the future, I'll let you know what it's like to be a dog." Zhun Xiaoyao's words made Long Yao's throat tighten. She did not dare to utter any threats anymore. "By the way, I know who you are, so don't you dare provoke me again." Zhun Xiaoyao's eyes flickered. Long Yao swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Her heart skipped a beat. It turned out that Zhun Xiaoyao had already known who she was. He was right. Long Yao was one of the 7 defiant emperors too. As the nemesis of the sacred flesh, it was reasonable for Long Yao to be one of the 7 defiant emperors. However, similar to Ling Yang, Long Yao had yet to merge with the seal of Dao realization. She wanted to defeat Zhun Xiaoyao with her own strength. It turned out that she was too naive. So naive that it was a little funny. If the will of the immortal realm had appointed her as one of the 7 defiant emperors, it clearly implied that she would not be able to defeat Zhun Xiaoyao on her own. Long Yao did not say a word. She went over to Long Yuan. Zhun Xiaoyao had taught her a lesson after the battle. "Yao, let's go." Long Yuan sighed in his heart when he saw Long Yao acting this way. He was worried that something like this would happen. That was why he had been restraining Long Yao from being born. The ancestral hall of the Overlord Physique had deliberately set up a conspiracy. They did not hesitate to sacrifice Xiong Fei to plot against Zhun Xiaoyao, paving the way for Long Yao's birth. However, it turned out that all methods were useless in the face of absolute strength. Zhun Xiaoyao had slapped them hard in the face. Long Yuan left with Long Yao. This time, the ancestral hall of the Overlord Physique and the ancient Void Dragon clan had paid a huge price. The ancestral hall of the Overlord Physique lost a supreme mystic venerable one. The ancient Void Dragon clan lost the Book of Life and the Spring of Life. Zhun Xiaoyao, on the other hand, gained both fame and fortune after this battle. No one on the entire ancient road of ultimate had a reputation that surpassed Zhun Xiaoyao's. Even the Xian Ting's top outlawed prodigies, such as Ling Yang and Jiu Tiezi, could not compare to Jun Xiaoyaro in terms of reputation. The son of God of the Jun family is truly heaven-defying. In this era of great strife, all the glory has fallen on him. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro was revered by tens of thousands of people. Jiang Shengyi and Jiang Luoli smiled proudly. This was the man of their dreams, whose aura shook the heavens and reigned supreme in the world. The Son of God is truly an eye-opener. No wonder he's qualified to be called a seed. The executor of the ancient roadside. Seed. Jun Xiaoyaro pondered the meaning of this. The geniuses buried in the dust of history, the unparalleled demon-level geniuses recorded in ancient history. The top geniuses of each era are known as the seeds. It's like burying a seed in the soil, waiting for it to blossom and bear fruit, the executor of the ancient road explained. The hope of every epoch, the most monstrous of prodigies, were called seeds. Among them, there was no lack of people who had self-severed multiple times. They were even more monstrous than the ancient freaks. This was because they were not sealed in a godly source or a treasure land. Instead, they were buried in ancient history, the most mysterious and powerful of prodigies. I see. It seems the future won't be too boring. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled indifferently. With his current talent and strength, he could be called a seed of this era. Jun Xiaoyaro felt that even after he finished walking the ancient road, the future would not be too boring. After all, in the future, the seeds buried in the various epochs of history would appear one by one. In this era of great strife, they would blossom and bear fruit. Next would be the era of the seeds. At that time, it would truly be a battle of 100 barges, and all kinds of people would compete for freedom under the frosty sky. Whoever won the competition would be able to dominate the world and ascend to the pinnacle. Of course, I'm looking forward to seeing the Son of God reach the end of the ancient road and participate in the ultimate trial. I'm sure he'll give those Outlander dogs a big surprise. The executor of the ancient road looked at Jun Xiaoyaro with eyes that shone with anticipation. He was a descendant of the gatekeeper bloodline, and hated Outlanders with a passion. In the 9 heavens' immortal domains, he was very happy to see an outlier like Jun Xiaoyaro appear. He also wanted to see Jun Xiaoyaro sweep through all of the Outlander realms. The ultimate trial? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes glittered. He had heard that in this epoch, if he could reach the end of the ancient road and pass the trial, he would be able to acquire incredible fortune. However, from what the executor of the ancient road was saying, it seemed that the ultimate trial would involve contact with the Outlander realms. That was interesting. The ultimate trial has something to do with a god-myth emperor, the executor of the ancient road said with a smile. If the Son of God is lucky, he might be able to acquire a legendary treasure, the World Tree. What? Jun Xiaoyaro said in shock.